It's, uh, it's a serious matter. Mental health has been a big issue in the community for a long time, and we've overlooked it so many times and chalked it up to being certain other things, how we've been raised, how we've been brought up. And today we wanted to bridge the gap between, um, I'm a firm believer, and I've visited a lot of states and cities throughout my lifetime. Been in the military, I've visited a lot of different places. And everywhere I went, there's always been some type of railroad track. It's either been seen or unseen. It's visible or not visible. And with that, there's a discrepancy between that railroad track. We have a river here that is a discrepancy between the river. And we want to bring and bridge that gap with everyone coming together as one. We're not trying to separate anything. We're not trying to beat anyone up. But what we are doing is coming together with all different type of people with the same mindset of helping other people. So that's why this event is very important for us to start some of the things that we want to do, some of the things that we would like to do, and some of the things that we can talk about doing, because we can fight outside of the doors forever. But until we come in here and sit down and come up with solutions and actually implement some of these solutions, we can make a change. So I want to thank you guys for coming out. It takes boldness. You are brave. So give yourself a hand for coming out. So how did I choose the individuals that I have here today to speak on mental health? Well, I know quite a few people. And all of these people that I chose today are not in one particular field. They're just different. People that I thought about, people that I prayed about, people that I have come in contact with, that I feel have the same mindset of moving a city, a neighborhood forward. These people have shown themselves to be very knowledgeable in their areas, but also practical people, down-to-earth people. Now, I am a real therapist. Someone asked me, are you a really therapist? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I did spend a lot of time in school and still in school to do exactly what I'm doing here today. So, I would like to ask you guys one question. Do anybody in here know anybody that deal with a mental health issue? Okay, thank you. So we have what they call the ACEs when it comes to mental health. ACEs is a adverse childhood experience questionnaire. Adverse childhood experience questionnaire. And it's supposed to be an indicator of trauma, developmental speaking, from childhood up till adulthood. It says if you score over a 4, just 4 is not a big number, that you're more at risk of developing some type of trauma experience or have experienced. Most of us in here will meet that criteria of at least 4 of them. Environmental, culturally, situationally, someone will meet that criteria. And here's the caveat. It doesn't matter what side of the river you're on. That's what I'm trying to point out here today, is that it doesn't matter what side of the river we're on. We all have, we're susceptible to having some type of mental health experience. And that's not a bad thing, though. The bad thing is we don't talk about it. The bad thing is we don't want to acknowledge it. The bad thing is, I want y'all to help me finish this out. What happens in this house, what? See? We can't do that anymore. We can no longer do that anymore. We have to take charge of our lives, and we have to be human beings first and to help other people. We cannot stand aside and say, that's not my problem, because it is. If anyone know anything about Rockford, we used to have a facility here that housed mental health patients, that catered to mental health patients. We no longer have that. Now, we're not pointing any fingers. All I'm saying is now those people are in jail. They don't have facilities to go to. So it's all of our problem. So as we get ready to start, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. As we get ready to start, we're going to have presenters. They're gonna be up here about 5 or 7 minutes, and they're gonna talk to you about different aspects of mental health, how to get services, how use your insurance, just in general, anything pertaining to their presentation about mental health. They're gonna be up here 5 to 7 minutes, so don't get mad if they cut off. But this microphone right here, we will use to ask questions, okay? If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll get that mic to you. You don't have to move around in the seats and walk over anyone, okay? We'll get that to you. So before I bring up my first presenter, I will say this. If you guys see someone that is not here today, what I need you to do is get your cell phones out. I need everyone that has a cell phone to go to my YouTube channel, Mentality Unchained. Go to the YouTube channel and subscribe and like, and tell your friends or relatives to subscribe and like. We're going to live stream this. I understand that we don't have, that people can't make it to certain things. They may have other events, but they can see this on my YouTube page. We're going to live stream. So we're going to get ready to go live in 2 minutes. So please take the time right now, go to Mentality Unchained YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, text whoever you don't see next to you, and tell them to go to the page, subscribe, and we're going to send a notification out, and we're going to get started with our presentation. Okay. We still subscribing? Subscribing. I do have a pastor in the house, and what he would usually say is, I still hear pages when they're looking for scripture. Ain't that right, Pastor? Okay. Okay, so our first presenter, I don't know too many people that can outwork me, but this young man, you know, I think what my grandmama used to say, tit for tat. And he works hard in the community. He's known in the community, and he's a great guy. I've met him years ago, and we've been friends ever since. So Mr. Tony Turner is the founder of and executive director of Conscious Coaching. He's a behavioral health coach, and he focuses on strategic planning for minority education and community development. At this time, please welcome Tony Turner.
Thank you for that introduction, Kevin. I will say that Kevin is actually the one that made me begin to look at mental health. When we started working together years ago, I was working on the unit, you know, at the group home, and my thing was all about systemic issues and how these children, they just ain't have somebody at home to get them a whooping or put them where they needed to be. But I had a relationship with the children that I can get them to do things that other people couldn't do. You know, they would be fighting. I'd walk in the room and be like, and I would talk to them like they was my kids, nieces, and nephews. You know, call them by their nickname, whatever, cut that out, and it happened. But when Kevin began to expound on how trauma really affects our community and really what it was, I began to see a whole nother side of life with trauma and how it's impacted. A lot of us, we know what trauma is, but we don't know. because we see it every day. It's a hidden form. So with that, I need 2 volunteers from the audience. Okay, that's 1, that's 2. And the ironic thing is it was 2 ladies first. 2 black women, right? So that goes to speak a lot of what's going on with our community, right? For men especially, a lot of times it is the black woman who stands up first because they have a innate level of fearlessness to take on problems and make change. You know, so can I get those 2 volunteers? Yeah, come on down. You put your hand up. So I was on my way here and I had a notepad and I had my stuff wrote out what I was going to talk about, and I had on khakis and a button up. And the first thing I said was, this is not me normally. I dress like this when I have to meet certain people, talk a certain language, and today I feel like I'm going to be around my people, so I'm going to be me. So I went home, turned around, changed, left the notebook, and said, what am I going to do? I was at an event yesterday, and I was inspired by someone that was there, and it made me think about it. So everybody knows what this is, right? What is this? No, it's not. It's trauma, right? This is a bag of trauma, mental health issues. There's 24 different problems in this bag. Now, it's enclosed, right? So it looks like she has everything together, right? So when we look at life, we look at people from the outside and we think they have everything together. But it's trauma. How do you deal with it? How do you transition? How do you change? Now, so when we think about it, this person here may have enough people around them to hold those situations together long enough to get help, may even have somebody that'll take it for them. But then we have other people. Cornell, can you help me? We have other people. Nope. That got one issue. Cool, right? Couple more things happen in life. Couple more things. And it just continues to happen, right? And you ask them, how are you doing? How are you?
I am great.
What goes on in this house? Truth about it is, we do talk about trauma. We just don't talk about it how we should. Because it stays in the house, but everybody in the house talk about you. And we always get therapeutic. Everybody in here is a therapist. They're just not certified. It's a difference, right? So me and my brother have a saying, we always get advice, but the question is it good advice? You can have a person telling you everything to do, and all of that can be wrong. And you continue to listen, and it get worse. And nobody is willing to tell you that that's wrong. And not one time did she say she need help. Because we are taught that our strength is in our silence. Right? So I need you. Oh, she said, help me, Lord. Right? We do that too. Help me, Lord. We go to church, right? But you get there and nobody's saying nothing about it. Not even the pastor is telling you to go get some therapeutic help. Pray about it. We'll get it together. Hold on. No, don't. What happened? What happened? You falling apart. Why? Why? Too much to carry, right? Okay. So now, can you do me a favor? Can you just walk to the front? Just a little bit. Give me 5 steps. So look, some people can balance and hang on to things their whole life. But what if I was to ask her to reach out and help somebody right now? You're going to go a leg, right? But this is what happens when we're carrying all the burdens. We're connected. We got family members, we got friends, and somebody needs you to help them at some point. Can you ever help them? But if she has someone come along and say, I see you dealing with this. This is how we correct it. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that, because we can pick it up, because things happen. This is how trauma affects our community. And we never show people how to deal with it. So the more ways we find to help each other, the lighter the load becomes. To the point to where she can carry on and she can walk and start helping herself, right? And then she can put her issues down herself. But the crazy part is, you have a lot of people like that, right? But notice, she's been holding this the whole time. This is how most of us are, right? Because to me, there's a spectrum. There's people that are in dire need, emergency, right? So to me, the mental health, I look, economics and mental health to me seems to line up completely. So that's a person that's suffering from low income. They can't do nothing for themselves or whatever. Now, this is the person that's straddling the fence. I got just enough to maintain, but I'm still going through. And we see them as okay, right? But what happens when something tragic comes along and rips her whole life apart? And nobody ever asked her what happened. She's steady trying to hang on. Who's going to help her put her life back together? Who noticed? But we've seen her as having everything together. But we came to her rescue because we could obviously see what was going on. And the whole time we was up here, nobody came to ask her, did she want help holding that? As a community, we have to begin to look beyond the surface level, the outside, and find ways to alleviate pressure and stress from people before it gets to a traumatic situation that can't be stopped, saved, helped, or healed. So what I do with conscious coaching, for a long time I thought about going into therapy, inspired by Kevin, but I said a lot of times there's not a bridge between that point where a person really needs a bunch of therapeutic help and just being able to understand and maintain, because a lot of things can be prevented if we have the proper people around us. So I'm conscious coaching. I hope you guys have a better visual of how trauma affects and what we have to do to change the traumatic situations, the mental health ideology within our community of color and with people all around us. Thank you.
Look at the people help clean it up. Here's the thing about what Tony just did. First thing is, thank y'all for helping him. What Tony just did was giving us permission to seek help. You cannot be afraid of what you may be dealing with. And if you see someone, know someone, hear of someone, you have to reach out. Too many times we're not reaching out. A person like Tony knows me, can reach out to me. As a therapist, I can help. If I can't help, all those people sitting over here, I can reach out to them. We're all connected. So we have to understand that the connection that we all have is that we're all human and we all deal with problems. When Destiny was sitting over here holding all that water together, you know what she showed? She showed a person that we thought had it all together. But here's what happens with that. Do you know since the pandemic, 71% of individuals, people of color, since the pandemic has committed suicide. We call it completed suicide, have completed suicide. And guess what the demographics and the age is? African American young folks, 18 and younger. 71% said that I couldn't do it anymore. 71% says, I don't know if they're going to help me if I ask for it. And my wife said something to me yesterday. She said, do you know all of the women that are starting to commit and complete suicide? And you would think that they had it together. We all are interdependent people, and we're all connected. So let's start reaching out and helping each other. Thank you, Tony, for that. So the first thing that we like to do when we need help is go to the emergency room. We like to get help from where we think and feel that we should get help. It says ER, emergency room, meaning it's an emergency, right? Well, I have someone here today that's going to talk about how that particular situation pans out. So without further ado, Miss Stephanie Esau. She's a critical care nurse, and she also has worked in emergency medicine and for more than 3 years in the ICU. And she works with patients and families who experience acute mental health issues. Stephanie Esau.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie. So working in the emergency room and also working in ICU, I have a very unique perspective because I tend to see the people who come in who are in acute crisis. Those are the ones that come in who it's either the very first mental health break where, they were fine and the bag fell apart. Or those who have diagnosed mental health issues and have an acute crisis where their mental health issues are actually, showing themselves, whether they're medicated or unmedicated. Some of the things that we have to deal with, when it comes to that is whether or not that person needs to be seen acutely or immediate or have an inpatient stay. For us, typically what that means is we'll do a complete medical screening, make sure that person is not presenting with any kind of medical crisis that could be causing the mental health crises. And once we've cleared them medically, then we get in contact with our mental health professionals to come and do an assessment on those patients. Many times what we see, depending on if it's an adult or a child, insurance is always a big problem. So if you have private insurance, you're more than likely to find placement. But unfortunately, with there being so many mental health crises within the pandemic, sometimes we can have patients sitting in our waiting room or our emergency room 72 hours a week, even longer. We had a child that could not find placement for 3 weeks in our emergency room. And this is because of the amount of mental health crises that we've been having during the pandemic and the fact that they were on public aid. So finding a facility that will take somebody without insurance. So all of those things are problems that we have to deal with in the emergency room. And if you think about that family and that kid and those parents who have to deal with their child being in an emergency room for 3 weeks, how do they work? How are they taking care of their other family? So it becomes a snowball effect that becomes an issue throughout the family. It's not just that one person that's having that issue. It becomes an issue throughout the family. I work in an area that is of mixed population. So we see Hispanic population, white population, Black population. So we have a plethora of people from different demographics. And when you see the difference in treatment based off of who can afford insurance and who cannot, and you know that the ones that can't afford insurance are going back out without the resources they need, you just know that those problems are going to continue. The other thing that I have in my time working in ICU is that we always think of, maybe the mental health crises from, whatever depression, bipolar disorder, those kind of things that we see. We fail to think about how the people who are in an ICU due to, whatever traumatic reasons they were brought in, end up with PTSD from being in the ICU. So there's so many other layers of mental health that we don't think about when it comes to when you're in the hospital and how those need to be dealt with. The hospitals do not have enough resources when it comes to social workers. You may have one social worker, two social workers for the whole hospital when you have multiple people in crisis. We do have other people that we can call or other resources outside of the hospital that we can call. But my hope and my inspiration for mental health when it comes to that is that we also deal with it not only from the crisis perspective, but from a cultural perspective. Because a lot of the things that I've noticed is how, and I can only speak from my perspective, is how when we look at people that are African American, how we deal with crisis is completely different how somebody of another culture would deal with crisis. But we have people who come in to talk to our children or talk to our parents or talk to our brother and sister, and they're not understanding the cultural side of it. So I would love to see a little more diversity in that part, especially in the acute care side. The other thing that that I wanted to speak about was if you have a family member that is in an acute crisis that you need or want to have seen and evaluated, it's a great way to try to find resources right away if that's something that you'd like to do. And typically for us to be able to hold your family member, to be able to have those assessments done, we use what we call an involuntary petition, and that's through the Illinois state. It does restrict a lot of their rights of leaving the emergency room if we feel that they are unsafe for themselves. If we don't believe that they have a way of communicating their safety and how safe they'll be if they are sent home. If we do that, know that there is going to be a lot of restrictions to what the patient can do, what the patient can have, but it also allows us the ability to get them that help. So anybody can fill out the petition, whether it be a police officer, a family member, anybody like that. Just make sure you put specific information on how that person is not caring for themselves. Give specifics on what kind of crises that you're seeing so that we can try to get them the kind of help that they need.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that great information. I'm just going to take just maybe one or two questions. Does anybody have any questions so far for the first two presenters? Because they put out a lot of information and great information. Yes. Hold on, John. Go ahead. Go ahead. It's on. It's on. Yeah.
I have a situation where I've seen over the years where youth that's been sexually violated when they was a kid, then they grow up having sex with adults and they have a mental problem. I got a situation with a mom where her daughter is out here. She's been sexually molested since she was 9. Now she's 17. It's having a mental stress on the mom. Well, I'm getting ready to take the mom to Rosecrans come Tuesday. Why don't we have a program here for our youth? Instead of our youth that have been sexually molested have to go to Chicago. Why should they go to Chicago? We should have some place right here for them to go. We have a large number. Then when the pandemic hit, the sexually molested skyrocketed. Females date rates skyrocket. What do we? How can y'all address that? And that's a serious thing that we need to address with our young teenagers.
Hi, I'm Chrissy. I'm from Beacon of Enlightenment and Lantern Therapy Services. So what you're talking about is very true. It's been very true in our community for years and years. So if you have to get a youth, and many times not only a youth, depending on services, we're also having people who, just like Stephanie had said, that they're sitting in our emergency rooms for days. And the reason being is, it comes to a political issue. It really does. Because how do we get ambulances into Chicago? Are they available? Are they slotted to that football game at that high school? Sorry, you're going to wait. So what you're saying is a very true thing about sending these youth into Chicago. One thing that in this community, as a therapist, what I have found being as a therapist in this particular community, is a lot of the therapists don't know who each other are. Do you have a grant? Do you have a grant? Who are you? Where could I go for help? So some of this is the resources aren't into the hospitals enough to reach these youth. However, there's places like the place that Kevin and I work at that we do a lot of trauma work. So if you could give us a call, you can give us what your benefits is. Let's see if we can work with it. Find out who owns the grants in this community and find out, is this a place that we can serve a youth? So somebody like Kevin and I, can we provide an inpatient? No, we can't. But depending on benefits, can we get this young youth in our door and do some serious trauma work with her? We can. But it's a difference of, I'm not quite sure what this family structure is, but one thing that we forget to look at, and I think you spoke to this, but I'm going to kind of go deeper into what you just said. So we have a youth that is traumatized and hurt, right? Yeah, we do. Who's looking at her mama, right? Because that mama's just looking at, I want to help my baby. But who's looking at that mama? That mama's life is forever changed. So we come back now to what Mr. Turner was talking about, right? That stuff that mama's carrying. I got to keep it together. I got to take care of this child. But that mama, when she sleeps at night, she doesn't get those images out of her head. So you're talking about a multi-layered issue. How do we help that girl? And how do we love that mama? Absolutely. And now what you're talking about is you're talking about a youth or a mom, because the body doesn't forget, right? But I'm gonna put on this mask for you. But now when I walk out into the community, I get labeled as like, oh, she's abrasive, stay away from her. No, she's not abrasive. She's been harmed, right? And so now we don't trust anybody. And you're absolutely right. And the reasons why we don't tell people is if I tell somebody, is that person coming to hurt me? Heaven forbid, if you will. Heaven forbid, it was the uncle that hurt me, right? Right. And now we don't go to Christmas because grandma says, I just want to forget it. Can we just be a family? That girl and that mama is forever changed. Family is forever changed, right? So we're talking about a deep, deep-rooted family problem. And we're talking about isolation, because the isolation of, I need help, I can't get help. And then many times, Kevin, Miss Felicia over here, Cora, what we have seen in our office is the socially acceptable, unacceptable way to get help. I'm going to go ahead and take a rash decision, and maybe I'm going to swallow a bottle of Tylenol. I don't want to die, but if I swallow the bottle of Tylenol, Miss Esau over there will make sure that she signs a petition, a 5 and a 6 on me to make it so that I stay in the hospital, right? And if I stay in the hospital, you made me get help, right? But what happens when that person leaves? What happens if those resources aren't in that hospital to know, hey, there are places in the community. But hey, Lantern Therapy Services is across town. Beacon of Enlightenment is right there too. They have these Medicaid contracts. They have these sliding scales. They have this group. Just call them. And how do we give that young girl the permission? Or the mom the permission? Because sometimes it's about pride too. If I'm a mom and I can't help my child, then who am I, right? Well, no, you're a mom with a broken heart who is forever changed. And she needs love too, just as much as that child does. So it's knowing your resources in the community. It's finding somebody who can give us a call or get in contact with us. Okay, those resources are there, and we should not be driving a youth into Chicago. You're absolutely right.
Good afternoon, I'm Tiana McCall. So in the scenario that Brother Tack just presented to everyone, the first thing you said was, have her call us and we see what the benefits are. So the bigger issue with the population that we're serving, the population that's stigmatized by mental health and mental health issues, is that's the first blocker. Right? First thing you said, what's the benefits? So we know the population, Brother Tack, they don't have the benefits. They might go the route that you just explained regarding, self-harm, where it's forcing them to go to the hospital. But then when they're in a hospital, it's the same issue. They don't have no benefits. Let's have them sit and wait for days and days at a time and still not getting assistance. My question to you all is, and I know we all have to get paid. We all want to, we have to eat and things. But if we look into the deeper issue, like Brother Tony said, the systematical issues that are occurring, that's way deeper. We're not even going to get to this step where this young lady is going to feel comfortable to go to Brother Tack and go to the hospital, because we have this major blockage. So I know that some of these organizations that you guys represent are private. Just what are you guys doing to try to help reach the population that we're most desperately need to reach right now?
Great question, Tiana. And I'm going to answer that exactly how you asked it. First thing is, when there's indication of any type of sexual abuse, Rockford Sexual Assault is a place that you can take. It's discreet, and you can talk to someone about that. But as it relates to what Tiana is talking about, she's absolutely 100% correct. But here's what we are doing now is, for so long, we've been talking about the system and trying to fight the system. But what we're doing right now, these people, these individuals over here, we're trying to break down that barrier. We're here so we can break down the walls that between the insurance issues and the benefits issues, all those issues. And what Chrissy was speaking to is that you can come and speak to any of us and we can help you break down those barriers. Don't stay silent. And it goes back to what we initially said, is what happens in this house stays in this house, because John said that they are embarrassed. So the first step is they have to get up, because I can't see inside your home. I need you to come talk to me. If I have an insurance issue, so we have this thing we call a sliding scale. Chrissy brought it up. There are times where I've seen people for free. We break down walls by doing, not talking about it. And so first thing is, you need to come to me. I don't know your situation. Until we know your situations, we can't help. We're just on the outside. So we have to get rid of the embarrassment and stop saying what happens in this house stays in this house. Because if you know what, if it happens in this house and it stays in the house, it's going to stay there. And there's going to be a huge problem. So we want to erase that by coming here today. We're saying, hey, we're putting ourselves out here to say, you know what, we're willing to help. That's what this entire thing is to say, you know what, let's take down the wall. Let's cross the river. Let's put our hands together. And everybody's over here is not a therapist over here. Everybody's don't work in the hospital over here. Tony's in the community. Representative West is all the way in the state. So we just need you to say, hey, I need help. So we can't help you. If you don't ask for it, we don't know. Well, see, here's the problem, Mr. Tack. Here's the problem. We're not the system. None of us are the system. We're all a part of the system. But it takes people to step away from the system to combat the system. So we're working together. Everyone here, we're working together to make a change. Okay? So I don't want to get off task because we can have this conversation all night long. Okay? And because we got a wealth of information, I want to get this too. So I need to keep moving. Oh, somebody had a question? It may be a lack of providers, but also we have to have resources. We have to have be able to connect with people. And if you know people that know people that know people, then you can find that information out. We got people here today that could tell you and connect you with people. That's why we're here. So if you have questions and you need things answered, ask them. That's what the meet and greet was for. That's what after this is for. So we just want to make sure that we put names to faces. You guys see who these people are. And if you have questions, they can point you in that direction. So the first thing is, this is part of a three-part plan that I have. First thing is to organize. The next thing is to conversate. That's what we're doing here now. The next stage is to implement. And we're going to be out in these communities. We're not asking any questions. We're not asking people to do this for us. We're going to do this on our own. We're going to get out here because we need to do that. So y'all just continue to work with us and help us reach the people that need the help by coming out and say, hey, I need help. No longer are we going to stand around and be embarrassed. Let's say I need help. Because if I'm dealing with something, I'm going to say I need help. So that's what I need all of you guys to do. So let's, before we go to our next presenter, we got a special guest here today. That's going to present a proclamation today. So I want to introduce you guys to Carla Clark and Gina Meeks. I want to introduce you to Carla because she's a Rockford author who's interested in mental health, particularly with our youth. Carla is a native of Rockford. She's author of a children's book, collaborated with a San Diego-based author to create a national holiday, the National Be Brave Day on May 16th. Y'all can clap for that. The campaign includes a free school bravery program for elementary schools around the country to help students learn about how to become more resilient and celebrate bravery. So today, on behalf of the Mayor, Tom McLemore, Alderman Gina Meeks will present the city proclamation declaring May 16th to be National Be Brave Day. Thank you, Carla, for making it your mission to help schools, children, and supporting mental health, the mental health community.
Thank you so much. I'm going to put the book here because you all got to see this book. It's amazing. Well, I am so happy and proud to be here. This is an amazing, amazing event. I just have to say that. You all give a round of applause. Mentality Unchained. Carla, I'm going to read this proclamation because I think it is so important to hear these words. Proclamation. Whereas our school-age children have experienced increased levels of anxiety and depression brought on by the pandemic. And whereas disruptions in routines and social isolation can have long-term implications on a child's mental health. And whereas we support helping our school children to be more brave, build self-esteem, and develop better coping skills. And whereas there is a growing body of research proving that social emotion learning is fundamental to academic success and must be woven into every classroom if we truly want to prepare our students. Now, therefore, I, Gina Meeks, on behalf of Thomas McNamara as mayor of the city of Rockford, do hereby proclaim that May 16, 2022 to be National Be Brave Day. Give it up for Carla. Carla, do you have some things to say?
Thank you so much, Gina, for that. And thank you, Kevin. The only reason I'm here is that Kevin invited me to come. And so we're so thankful. We're working with schools. We've got hundreds of schools across the country so far that are signed up this year during our pilot year. We're going to get sponsors next year, work with mental health advocacy groups and other groups, and really make this big. We want to help as many children as we can to be brave. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Guys, please support Carla in her endeavor. So we're going to continue to move on and make sure that we get our presenters in and get to the panel, because it seems like you guys have a lot of questions, and I want to make sure that we get to address those. So the next person that comes up is a licensed professional counselor, certified in child welfare, play therapy for children, and inpatient psychotherapy. She also volunteers experience with working with church groups and high-risk populations, and she also specializes in motivational interviewing to explore and discover the possibility of change within the person. Please welcome Felicia Parham.
Good morning, everyone. I am going to briefly talk about what it means to be in a mental health crisis in the hospital setting. To kind of piggyback off what was said, just to kind of piggyback off what everyone has said, no one is exempt from a mental health crisis, and it's time out really for what happens in this house stays in this house. So after you have seen Miss Stephanie here, once you are assessed and it is determined that you need inpatient stay, then you will come up to the unit, and it's a psychiatric unit, and that's where you'll see myself. And on that unit, I'm a behavioral therapist, and what I do, I kind of monitor behaviors, and I work as an interdisciplinary approach where I work under the psychiatrist and a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And what we kind of do, we come up with a treatment plan for yourself. We talk about your needs, what's going on. We determine a diagnosis. We'll talk about aftercare, which is very important. We'll get to that as well. But again, no one is exempt. We see people from 5 and up in the hospital that suffers from a mental health crisis. It used to be a time where you thought young people weren't anxious or weren't depressed, or like Tony said, they just bad and need a whooping. No, studies are showing that young people are anxious. They are depressed. They do have other things going on. It's the trauma that Mr. T talked about and things like that. So we see those people. It is an acute care setting, meaning it's not set up for long term. We do our best to get your needs met. As everyone knows, well, in that setting, it's an opportunity to kind of start the healing process. We do offer groups. Some of those are ran by myself. We do medication management when it's warranted. And then we talk about follow-up. I know insurance is a big barrier for a lot of us, but do not let that be the reason why you do not get the help and the treatment that you deserve. At Swedish American Hospital, we do have a team that comes and meet with the individuals without insurance and talk to them about their options. They complete the Medicaid application with them personally. So really do not let that be a reason why you do not get the support that you need or the help that you need. When you meet with myself, we talk about aftercare and follow-up and what that looks like with the resources that we do have in the community. Although they're far and few and in between, there are really good organizations out here for those that need that aftercare. Some of the aftercare programs that we offer at the hospital is a partial hospitalization program. There is information about that in the area. And what that means is that you'll come to the hospital for 5 to 10 days just during the day from 9 to 3 and do group work. What that also means, you'll see a therapist on a regular basis while you're in that setting. You'll continue to see the psychiatrist while you're in that setting. So that's an option. We also have a mobile integrated health program. And what that means is a nurse, a trained nurse, a firefighter, and a social worker comes out to you in your home. So there are resources out there. We come to you. You don't even have to come to us sometime. And then lastly, we have a new program. It's called the Solaris Program, and it's for those that suffer from substance abuse issues, addiction issues. It is a specialized team for individuals who come in and need those services. And what they do, they offer recovery support. So there's no reason not to get help, but I'm the one that you see when you are in that crisis. And hopefully between myself and you, we can come up with a good treatment option. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Felicia. So you've already heard somewhat from this person of what she does and what she's capable of doing. This person and myself, we've been together for quite a bit of time now, almost 10 years now. And we've always been in lockstep with one another when it comes to helping people in the community. And I personally want to thank her because she got in the fight when no one else would get in the fight with me. And so I want to thank her personally for doing that. She's the president of Lantern Therapy Service. She's also executive director of Beacon of Enlightenment. She's a certified trauma therapist and a certified yoga instructor, trauma yoga instructor. So please welcome Chrissy Gowan.
Okay, I feel like I have the tough conversation here. Wow. All right. So I prefer to like freely talk, but to keep like myself on track with the insurance, because the insurance conversation can go a bunch of different routes. So one of the questions we have, I think that has been mentioned is, do I have insurance or do I not, right? So the typical responsibility of any client is, let's say they have insurance. The typical responsibility anytime you go anywhere, you will probably sign something called an informed consent, and that informed consent is going to say that you are responsible for your insurance benefit. Okay, so you're a mom with 5 kids who's got time to possibly spend 45 minutes on the phone with Molina or Meridian to find out what her insurance benefit is. Not a lot of moms. So one of the things that we can do by giving us a call either at Beacon Mental Health or Lantern Therapy Services, one of the things that we can do is you can give us a call and we can run your benefit. One of the things that we most often find is somebody will call us, but, oh, I got state insurance. Okay. Well, you'll help me? Yes, we're going to help you. Because what I found is that getting hung up on multiple times, I don't take Medicaid, hung up on many times, that's a trauma in itself, because what that instills is the hopelessness, right? So if I don't have a lot of self-worth and you're already telling me you can't help me because I got Medicaid, now my mama was right. My generation before me, they were right. Stays in the house. This is why, right? So by giving us a call, one of the things that people don't know is that when you give a call to a mental health facility, whether it be a big facility or a smaller facility such as ours, is there's some questions you can ask. Okay, so you can't take Medicaid. And there is a thing that is a very real thing, that in order to take Medicaid, I have to go through quite the lengthy process, and I have to go through a bunch of red tape as a therapist just in order to say that I'm paneled with a particular Medicaid company. And quite honestly, I feel like as a therapist myself, it's much more difficult to be paneled with Medicaid than it is a commercial insurance. But Medicaid is such a needed thing in our community that most often we don't have. So many times you get this Meridian card in the mail and like, wow, it looks great, I have insurance. But there's this belief that that's insurance for me to go to the doctor. That's insurance for me to go to the emergency room. If any of you have a Meridian card or a Medicaid card, I'm almost reasonably certain that you can flip it over and there's nothing about, and this covers your mental health needs too. So let's say that you don't have insurance. What do? A lot of people won't even make the phone call. So if you don't have insurance, one of the things I often talk to people about, it is a tedious process. Maybe you call a social service place to help you jump into this. Who has an intern? Now, Kevin and I, we accept interns at both of our facilities. And while an intern, technically, yes, they're usually in their last semester of school or so, but they're supervised by somebody like myself or Kevin. So while an intern may not be necessarily what you want, is it a connection? Is it a connection to somebody? Is it someplace to just unload? Because when we have an intern, that intern is supervised by Kevin and myself. That treatment plan that is developed for that client is supervised and approved for by Kevin and myself, every single client. So one of the questions I think we should be asking is, if I don't have insurance, is there somebody in the community who has an intern? Who holds grants in this community? Because grants is put out there to say, I gave you this amount of money to help these clients. How do we get in touch with those places that are going to know where the community grants are? So is it calling downtown to, downtown Rockford, to one of the government officials saying, where are the grants? I need help. So when we look at hospitals and such, there's this thing about hospitals that is this belief that you can get help and you get some really, really great help from the hospital. But the problem is go back to the water that Tony Turner opened with. And the young lady who held the water, or even the young lady who had the water like unpacked, right? So sometimes I notice in some of our bigger, much more bigger community health centers, they do some great work there, but those community health centers, they're incredibly overwhelmed. They got people on waiting lists, just like many of us do in the community. However, one thing that I find, and I hear time and time again, as I'm doing pre-certs for people who maybe they don't have insurance, or maybe I don't accept their insurance, but they're going to call me on the phone, and I'm going to say, wow, I'm not paneled with that insurance company. Can you tell me your story? Can you come sit with me an hour? Because I can write a clinical summary about you and fax it to the insurance company that I don't have a contract for. And usually within 24 to 48 hours, they're going to get back to me and say, oh, here's a pre-certification. Go ahead and see that client. Something that is not a service because many clinicians are overwhelmed in the community. Now, when you go to the bigger community health centers, they may already have that insurance company in place for a Medicaid contract. They may not. However, one thing that I find is if you have a big T trauma, sir, you were talking about a big T trauma, right? Okay. But let's go back to the example that Mr. Turner had talked about with the water. So the ladies with the water, I could argue that they have trauma. And the reason being is because one lady could be judged for, she doesn't really have trauma. Her water was put together. The other young lady who had the water all jumbled out and falling out of her hands, that's trauma. I see that. That's real trauma. So I'm a therapist, and I can help you because that's real trauma. I can see it. I can prove it to the health insurance company when I go to bill that that's trauma. I don't have to think that one through. This young lady over here, I don't know. I felt bad for you because Mr. Turner, he had you holding that case of water for a really long time. And so, as I sat there and I'm watching you, the thing that kept going through my head was the body remembers, right? The body remembers. It doesn't matter if it's an assault, and it doesn't matter if it's holding that water all your life. And maybe holding the water, maybe that example is a caregiver telling you that you're not good enough all your life, and now here we are in the adult world. I'm still carrying that water. Your arms are trembling, right? However, the problem is when we talk about billing, we talk about community mental health centers that are overflowing. I can help this young lady right here because trauma is right in front of me. But for you, yeah, you look put together, like you go to work every day, you got good grades in school. I'm going to close you out. I'm going to close you to services because that one is right behind you and I can see the trauma, right? And many times, that's what I see happening, not only in community mental health centers, I see it happening globally, all over. The clients that come in and they say, this is my last chance in therapy because my last therapist closed me because they said I was fine. Who's to judge if you're fine or not? So, if your arms are still trembling from that water, you're not fine. We just need to look deeper. We just need to be able to sit with somebody and be present with somebody to say, I can justify this to an insurance company to not close you. Because we also have the issue of, can I even get in your front door? Or will you take me seriously and not close me because I look put together, right? So these are some of the issues that we have with insurance companies. And we should not be in a place in our society that the only way to get help is to go to an acute care center. Acute care center, they do awesome work. However, they resource you, but they don't have the ability to work from your inside out. They do a great job with what they do, but then we put people out in the community without the services they need. So this is why I'm telling you, if you have insurance, call a provider, call myself, call Kevin, Beacon of Enlightenment, Lantern Therapy Services, okay? We will run your insurance. We'll put it into a system and see what it says. We'll hand it to our administrator. If you don't have insurance, I am more than happy to sit with anybody. As Ms. Felicia had said, maybe not in an acute care center setting, but I don't have a problem filling out the paperwork with you to figure it out. It can be figured out. Interns are there. People don't know this. If you don't ask the question, a lot of people aren't going to offer it up, right? So with that, I think all of my points were covered because some of my points were covered before. Another thing that I was asked to kind of offer is there's a difference in managed care. When we talk about managed care, what kind of insurance do I take? If I have to choose and I'm on the phone, do I take the Blue Cross Blue Shield Community Health? Do I take the Meridian? So here's the things that I could tell you, depending. These are good things for you all to know. So let's talk about Meridian for a second. Meridian. Meridian pays for many things. I have a lot of clients who are very happy with Meridian. The problem with Meridian, 26 sessions per year. 26. That's it. So when you look at 52 weeks in a year, you got a trauma and you see somebody else outside. So that 26 sessions doesn't just belong to my therapist, Chrissy. That belongs to my group therapist. That belongs to that person. So it's a 26 cumulative. You guys need to know that. Okay. So right around week 24, 25, what I can go ahead and do is I can ask the insurance company for more sessions and hope that we get them. Blue Cross Blue Shield, Community Health, I have not had that issue. They're pretty straightforward. So if you get choices, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Community Health. Some of the other insurance companies, Molina has been great for a provider as myself to work with. However, when I say these things, please remember, because as I was talking to a colleague of mine that you guys will hear from after a while, I may be saying, Meridian is great. but will Meridian pay for another service that you need? So questions, lots and lots of questions that we need to be able to be brave enough to ask those questions, okay? Because when we look at self-advocacy, it's your care. You know, the Meridian that you're saying, oh, let's go with that, they're not asking about, do you wear glasses? How are you going to afford those glasses, right? So just some things to kind of keep in mind, okay? All right, I'm going to hand it back to Kevin.
Thank you, Chrissy. So my next person, my last person that's going to present, this young guy is very special. He's been a team player, a mentor, a friend, and we've done a couple interviews together, and he's great for this city. He's great for this state. He's proven that he's great for this state and for this city, and in particular, the west side of Rockford. So I would read off a list of stuff that he has here, but I think y'all know him. So please, as we get ready to get ready for our panel, so you guys can get ready for the panel, we're going to welcome Maurice West II, State Representative, 67th District.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, I don't think y'all heard me. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, I am so excited to be here. I'm really excited and honored to have this chance to speak to you about mental health. And so I love how Brother Turner came in and said I had to go home and change my outfit because I had to be me. Well, I'm wearing this outfit on purpose because, as you know, this is me. And I say that because I grew up in the church. As you may know, my dad's a pastor, so I'm a PK. And so this is not just an Easter suit, this is an every Sunday suit, right? And then I became a preacher in 2011, so I had to wear this. And now I'm a politician, so this is an all-day thing. But I say that because don't let the suit fool you. Don't let the title of preacher fool you. As a preacher, I dealt with suicidal ideology. As a politician, as an elected official, I deal with mental health and trying to remind myself who I am, remind myself of that the trauma that happened to me and myself was in the past. And now what I'm doing is making things better, but I always have to remind myself, I wear this suit to hide my insecurities. Real talk. I'm just being honest with you because vulnerability is one thing that our communities don't really appreciate and understand how vulnerability can help us to get to the next level of our healing. But as your state representative now, I now know what my experiences are. I see how, and I'm confident in the fact that, and Brother Kevin, I thank you for this opportunity and all of our subject matter experts in their own field, but I'm confident that our mental health is more important than our physical health. Our mental health is more important than our physical health. Why? It's going to take us to have a certain mindset to do what we need to do to heal. It's going to take a certain mindset for our body to heal. Case in point, I remember in my church, a lady going to the hospital, having a clean bill of health. Doctor said, you are physically okay, but she was mentally tired. So what did she do? She died. Physically okay, but mentally tired. I saw my mother-in-law get a clean bill of health right before the pandemic. Physically okay, but she was mentally tired. And I just watched with my own eyes her physical health just go down the drain. And the doctor right in front of me came and said, Jan, you need to make the decision to become better. Mental health is more important than physical health. And so now as a state rep, I see what the issues are, and a silver lining of this pandemic, I believe, is that we are understanding and appreciating and breaking down the stigma of mental health. Everyone was in one shape or form hit by mental health based on what we saw in this pandemic. But what brought me comfort was right before the pandemic, if you guys do not remember, March of 2020, right before the world shut down, we just finally learned what coronavirus was. Before, corona was just a drink, but now it's a virus. Right when it happened, we had an election where Winnebago County said, yes, 60% to 40%, increase my taxes for mental health. 60% to 40%, right before a pandemic. So what gave me comfort is that this county appreciates and understands the importance of mental health. But what I also saw, and one thing I'm trying to work on, and everything that we spoke on is true. Someone mentioned Medicaid and accessibility, and the system is broken. Yes, the system is broken. And I'm doing all I can to try to fix this system. We have a certain hospital, and I won't name any names, but Mercy Health, well, okay, rewind. We have a certain hospital who got rid of mental health services in the middle of a pandemic. We have a certain hospital, I won't say if it's the same one, but we have a certain hospital that dropped Medicaid patients in the middle of a pandemic. We have a certain hospital, could be a different one, I'm not saying it's the same one, that closed their ER at their hospital on the west side of town. And we know what the west side of town represents. We know what this side of the river represents. And they closed those services. And it was because the system is broken. I was just talking to Brother Turner, and I might have to, if you don't mind, where'd you go? I might have to use that like in a message at church. Bring some, all right, I may shoot the credits. But we was talking about how, and you said it plainly, when it comes to benefits, a lot of our providers may not take Medicaid, and at the end of the day, we may say it's because they are this, that, and the other. They're racist. They don't want nothing to do with me. But at the end of the day, they have to also make sure their doors stay open, and Medicaid doesn't help them to do that because the system was broken. It will take a Medicaid reimbursement a good portion of the whole year to reimburse these providers, and so they're working on in the red until they get the Medicaid reimbursement, and then they don't get the 100% back of the services that they provided. It's not the fault of the patient, it's the fault of the system. We have unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We all know that. The most important word in that stance to me is the word pursuit. The fact that you say my unalienable right is for me to pursue happiness, and one portion of happiness is for me to get my mental health in check. One portion of happiness is for me to live a life where I can breathe a sigh of relief and not always have to be on edge. As a community, if you step back and look at it as a community, and I'm speaking not just as an elected official, but I have advanced degrees in psychology. I too have a psychology degree, and so as you look at it, the stress levels, and I'm going to speak for the Black community, the stress levels, if 0 is here, 0 for the Black community is here at 10. While everyone else, other communities may be hovering around 0, our stress levels are already innately at 10 because of life circumstances that we go through. Because on the west side of town, it'll take 2 or 3 days to get a service provided to pick up a tree in my neighborhood, while on the east side of town, it takes 2 to 3 hours for me to pick up that same tree. And so even our environment affects our mental health. A colleague of mine, a friend of mine here in the community, Brother Patrick, who was wrongfully convicted, he calls it hood PTSD. We go through hood PTSD without even knowing it. Our stress levels are always up here without even knowing it. And guess what is the most lethal killer known to man? Stress. It's a silent killer. And so as the Black community, we're already stressed by simply living in an environment, in this society that looks at Black individuals as less than. And so we have to fix the system. And one thing I learned is in order to change the rules of the game, you have to be in the game. You have to learn how to play the game that is currently being played so that you can know what rules need to be tweaked. And that's where I'm at today. And even as your state rep, I think of all the mental health. Someone said mental health has no respect of person. Mental health does not care where you are in society. Mental illness does not care if your political ideology, your sexual orientation, your race, your economic status. It doesn't care about any of that. Every individual here, 1 in 5 of us, they say, knows of someone who deals with mental illness. And so it's important for us, my job, my fight, I just want to let you know, what I'm pursuing is helping our therapists, our subject matter experts here, to have, and for our patients to have access to mental health, no matter what your socioeconomic status may be. Whether you have Medicaid or Blue Cross Blue Shield, you should be able to get this access. As we get past a new pandemic, a new normalcy past this pandemic, telehealth, thankfully, has become a way of life. But insurance companies are trying to still be resistant to telehealth. And so we have to fix that. That helps us because there's not much diversity within therapy. Am I right, therapists? Not much diversity within therapy. And so it's hard for me, I'll speak for myself, it's hard for me to go to a therapist who does not look like me and tell him my problems. Hey, you the state rep. You got nothing to worry about. Today at 1 o'clock, I'm about to go knocking on doors till 6 o'clock tonight. That's mentally straining for me. My mama calls me BBM, big black man. Remember that you are a big black man first. No matter what, even how pretty your smile is, they're always going to look at you as a big black man. I have a suit on now. Y'all know me as State Representative West, but I kid you not, to this day, I could put on a hoodie and some sweats and walk past people. They don't even know who I am. But then I put the suit back on. Hey, you look familiar. And so I'm even dealing with the mental health. It's taxing, trying to make sure that I make the right moves. It's taxing, watching everything from the west side being moved over to the east side. And I'm like, this is my job to make sure it doesn't happen. God, I'm failing my people. I'm failing this side of town. And this is where the gray hairs came because of stress. Not even knowing that my mental health, my mental stability affects my stress levels, which affects my body physically, which causes people, especially black people, to die presumptuously, to have health problems that other communities do not deal with because our stress levels start at 10, not at 0. So the system is broken. I'm aware of that. We're doing all we can to fix that. We're doing all we can to move the system to pre-authorization, which means here's the money for you, therapist, for Medicaid patients. Keep track of how you pay it, and then if you don't use it correctly, we'll bill you, or we'll slap you on the wrist then. Instead, how we do it is, whatever money you have now, use that, and then we'll reimburse you. And now, if there's not diversity within our mental health system, how are some of the newer providers who are trying to make a difference, who do not have the money, a rainy day fund there to dish out before the money comes in, how will they ever be able to help people in their society? How will they ever able to help people in their community if the state waits until the service is given instead of trusting our providers in giving this service? So we need to work on pre-authorization, not post-authorization. We need to figure out what this mental health fund, the tax increase that we all voted for, how that's going to be a benefit to all communities. Will it help communities go to therapy if they need to? It's great that we're doing group functions. That's well and good, but a lot of us need individual care. So is this money used to ensure that people are able to get access to mental health? Lastly, and I should have gave you the disclaimer, preaching politician with a microphone is dangerous. But lastly, since my other calling is in the church, how do we bring that to the church as well? Yes, I'm praying. Yes, I believe what is the word says. But at the same time, if one of the people who wrote the book is a physician, why can't I go to see my doctor and get the services that I need? How can we ensure that services that are out here come into the church, so educate those who are in the church to make sure they know that it's okay to seek services. It's not a lack of faith. It's not a sin. It's doing exactly what was put on this earth for us to be utilized. Services that will help our mental health. Services that will help us to not only have life, liberty, but be able to effectively pursue happiness. Yes, it's broken. I'm committed that we will fix it, and we will fix it soon. And with the help of all of you, I'm really certain it's going to be sooner than later. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, y'all sitting there like y'all ain't at the football game, y'all ain't at the basketball game. So I think we need a break, right? Let's take about 5 minutes. Please drink up all the water, drink up all the coffee, eat all the snacks, get some cookies, please. Maybe that'll wake you up. But no, let's take 5 minutes and we'll start our panel discussion. Don't leave though, but just eat.
Who's breathing? What's that? Trying to pull my shoulders from my ears.
different people. To me, what got me really involved with the mental health aspect is understanding history, economics, and how those play a part in mental health. If we think about it, I don't know who in here is familiar with the term epigenetic, right? So there's epigenetic trauma, and this is where the history part comes into play. A lot of us don't know that we carry traumas that we have never physically been involved in through genetics and history. And a lot of our epigenetic trauma for people of color started with slavery. But we had therapy before slavery. So if you go back and look at history within our villages, when we would come together and we would talk to each other and receive sound advice. I'm going to clip it real quick. We would receive sound advice from each other. And poor tradition has gotten us away from that. And then when we have issues that come along our generation, those things begin to compound and we carry them on. So I just want us to begin to understand what epigenetic is and how that affects us so we can start to look at trauma from a different lens.
You expect me to follow that too, huh?
This is my educational advisor, Mr. Cornell Bondurant. You know, he is a great man in the community. He does a lot at Rock Valley. You know, they say good things come in small packages, and he is very great at what he does. He's up here.
Well, thank you, sir. As Tony said, my name is Cornell Bondurant. I am the Dean of Non-Credit Programs at Rock Valley College. Even though I'm in academia now, my background is in social work, specifically looking to decrease the recidivism rate of men and women coming home from a prison and destigmatizing that they're unable to find adequate employment, that they're unable or unfit to be in society, because I do believe that stems to a mental capacity as well. So that's my connection to mental health.
Good afternoon. I'm Cora Threadgill. I'm a registered nurse, and I've been a nurse for about 35 years. I had a little mental health background probably since I was born, knowing my family. I always tell people that we all have a mental illness. It's just some of us have a diagnosis. And it's how you see it, like Representative West said, stress kills. That's mental illness. We just don't do it. We don't talk about it. And as everyone else has said, what stays in the house needs to come out the house. Now we need to break that tradition. Currently, I do managed care. And so when Chrissy was talking about that, I knew all about that. And then I do residential behavioral health. So got a variety of things. But hopefully being on the panel, I'll be able to talk about what I know. And I'm just honored to be a part of the panel.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Esau. I'm a registered nurse. I grew up not here in Rockford. I'm actually from a different county, but the area that I grew up was not the best. I grew up near the projects. I grew up with a bunch of Black and brown people. My trauma came from there. If we think about who we are as Black people, our lives started from trauma. So we have that in our DNA, and we have to learn how to function and break down those walls.
I'm Chrissy Gowan, and yes, while I am not a Black or brown person, I was raised in a situation. I know, I'm sorry. Whew. All right. While I was raised in a white Caucasian family, I was also raised in a very poverty-stricken community, and growing up in the military, most of the time, You know, the person who was coming to Thanksgiving dinner was a Black or brown person. It was Uncle, whatever their name was at the time. So as I've grown up and returned back to a rural community and really embraced the culture that was there, even though there was a lot of criticism coming from a rural community about embracing culture. And so once I was able to come to Rockford, it was kind of nice because it's like coming back to like, wow, culture is a real thing here. Like people of different walks and working really, really hard to gain the trust of people. So how I started my career in Rockford was at a company that is no longer, unfortunately, was Janet Waddell's Mildred Center. So I started my career as a family therapist. I moved into the SAS supervisor for the 2 counties, which was crisis services. Later on, did some residential work where, once again, kind of finding my roots in a very different place, because when you're working with primarily the Black community and they don't trust you, and for 6 months, like my name was a derogatory white person's word, and embracing that and still showing up to work every morning saying, good morning, I care about you. Derogatory term comes, and 6 months later, so does a little bit of trust, whether it's a staff member or a youth. And then transitioning into private sector, which is where I'm at now, and really, really working hard to raise my private sector to a place that now my private sector can now support my not-for-profit to get back into the roots of what's important and reaching out to all marginalized communities to see where can I help, what can I do. You know, so I'm a person that, you know, I may own a company, and just like, you know, some others have said about putting on the suit, I don't care if I got the suit on or not. Your toilet's overflowing, show me where, I'll help, I'll jump in. So this is about getting dirty no matter who you are.
Hello, I am Andrell Bragshaw, and I'm a private practitioner, licensed professional therapist. I am located at Counseling Associates of Rockford. I am a lifelong resident of Rockford, so I know Rockford. Okay. One thing, I don't want to step on anybody's toes or anything that was mentioned earlier, but I do want to point out that the system is in fact not broken. The system is the way the system has always been. And hopefully by us participating in activities like this and going out into the community, we can make the system provide supports and services for some different people, from people who do not look like what the system was originally set up to do. Well, there's a good reason why you don't trust the system. You shouldn't. The system wasn't made for you originally. Okay, but there are now those who look like us, those who have been trained, who may not look like us, but have some type of multicultural training, who know the history of the system, and we are here to break down some of those barriers.
My name is K. Edward Copeland. I'm head custodian, third vice president of Usher Board number 4 at New Zion Missionary Baptist Church. I'm also the treasurer of the Winnebago County Mental Health Board, which 2 years ago, the community decided to tax itself a half-cent more for sales tax. The first programming year, we gave out $9 million or so. This programming year, 2022-23, it'll be 14.6 million. You need to go to the Winnebago County Mental Health Board website to see all of the services that we have just recently funded, because a lot of the things that have come up today are organizations we literally just gave money to address the very services you say you need. I said that to say, Rockford, actually, Dr. Steve Bland is the first one that said it to me, but for some reason people have given me credit because I guess I say it so much. But the reality is Rockford is not so much divided as it is disconnected. We have a lot of resources that are flowing through this community that are underutilized because people don't know about them. the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So I want to, first of all, commend Kevin for pulling all of this together so that we can see just this panoply, this constellation of mental health care providers. And I hope that we can get a master list of all of the African-American mental health care providers in the community so that we can blast that information out. But then secondly, I want to say that you're 2 conversations away from whatever you need. Rockford is not Chicago. Rockford is not that big. If you open up your mouth, if you talk to people, even if you don't have the resources yourself, there's somebody that can help you. And you're literally only 2 people away from whatever you need. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Kavasia. I am a professional student of life. So I just graduated from Alabama State University in the year of 2020. And since then, I've just been doing a lot of research on different things across the African diaspora, like why, So different things involving the African diaspora and just understanding why we are the way we are. We speak about not trusting systems, and we speak about not seeing enough people who look like us, and that's very true. So you may be familiar with me. I was at Auburn for 4 years, and it was like very changing for us. The class of 2016, we had to stand up for a lot, including our mental health and including just being heard. And that is something that taught me a lot about just coming back and giving back that same energy, because it just is needed. So hopefully you guys get to know more about me during this panel. I'm also an artist. I do a lot of things. So I'm a vocalist. My art is inspired by my ancestors, of course. And I started the art through my anxiety. So I realized in college, after I graduated, I was like, ooh, I'm looking up at the sky like, hey, Granny, what you want me to do next? And she's like, well, hey, you done everything that I asked for you to do. So now you have to figure out what else you need to do for yourself. And I was forced to take that time and stop picking up different things and saying I'm Superwoman, especially at the age of 23, 22, 21. Like, I had no business doing all the stuff that I was doing, but I made it my business because I thought that it was what I was supposed to do. So I was really forced to sit down and deal with myself, and I'm still in that season now. Thank you for reminding me.
And her art is featured out in the hallway. So please patronize her. It's one of a kind art, and you get the opportunity to get in on the artist at the ground floor.
Who's your daddy?
Hello, everybody. Is this on? All right. My name is Dennis Littlejohn. Just like Vay, we both graduated from Auburn together, and we also are 2020 graduates. And class presidents. I've had the extreme pleasure of graduating from Morehouse College. Then after graduation, I decided to come back home. And while being here at home, I've had the opportunity to take part in the community. I have the extreme pleasure to be the NAACP youth president. It's a heavy title because it's a lot to do. I see Mr. Brantley in the community. He's also, doing a lot with the youth. And there's a lot of work. And I would just like to recognize everyone for being up here, because I may not have the floor to say this, but Mr. Brantley, like you were saying, us as a people, we do not trust the system. And this is why we're up here, so that we can build that trust. We're liaisons, like Mr. Thomas has said, we know the system, and we are also, we are people. We're of color, so we can go back and we can teach our people how to, navigate that system. So this is why we're here. So use everybody up here to your advantage. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ann Bruce. I work for Winnebago County CASA. I am the Recruitment Outreach Coordinator, and I advocate on behalf of children who have experienced abuse and neglect. And I also have family members who have suffered from mental issues as well as myself. I have a high form of anxiety, but I learned to manage it with coping skills that I've learned from my personal counselor. And so that's why I'm a part of this panel.
Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. So now as we get into the reason why we're here is to talk about what we can do to help the community. As I said, this is only the second part, which is the conversation. The last step will be implementation. We're going to get to work. And I want you guys to join. You see these people up here today, get with them after and see what you can do in your community. It doesn't make sense for us to come together, talk about it as we've always done, and not do anything about it. We can all do something about what's happening in our community, any community that is affected by any of the issues that we're talking about here today. So I want you guys to really think about that as we discuss what we can do in these communities. And again, we're separating the river. This is no longer the east, the west side. We're talking about inclusion. We're talking about everyone. So we ask that you listen up. Also, I have to say this because we are live streaming. This is what we're talking about today does not only happen in the Rockford community. This happens across the United States, across our nation. All these things that we're discussing here today is affecting countries, it's affecting cities, state, as we're talking right now. So if you're listening through live stream, please get with someone that can help in your community, in your neighborhoods, in your states. And let's start this movement of helping and joining together and making things happen. This is just not a Rockford thing. I wanted to make sure I say that because we are live streaming. So now let's get into the question. And I ask that everyone speak into your microphone so they can hear you. And also make sure that we are considerate when we're answering our questions. And so someone else can speak on that. So we don't need any long-winded persons. So I would say something else, but we're not in that atmosphere. So I'm just going to say long-winded people. So the first question, and this question is to everyone. Bridging the gap is our theme for this mental health forum. So in your opinion, what will it take for us to bring people together and heal as a community when it comes to mental health? This is for everyone. Just grab the mic.
For me, what I've come to realize, because, you know, being in healthcare, working emergency room, working ICU, outside of dealing with my own trauma, I see trauma every day. So I've dealt with anxiety. I have my own counselor, just like many of us on this panel. But what I have come to realize is that for us to bridge the gap is that we also have to give grace to those that came before us. Because I'm dealing with the issues that I have based off of how I was raised. I didn't give my mom that grace that she was dealing with something when she was raising me. She probably didn't give her mother that grace that she was dealing with something when she was being raised by my grandmother. And it just kept going generation to generation. We as a people were never taught that our mental health is a primary source of why we are sick. As the brother said earlier, stress is one of those major things that causes our health issues. Not our health issues causing mental health. The mental health issues that we deal with just being Black in America is also what causes our mental health. We have higher rates of lung cancer. We have higher rates of cardiovascular disease. All of those can be linked back to stress, also the ACEs that Kevin talked about earlier, which is the trauma that we were experienced as children. So when you talked about that young girl and then her mother, the problem is when we don't speak up and we don't stop it from happening when it in the beginning, whoever abused her should have been in jail so that the abuse didn't continue. And then the mom, because she doesn't know the resources to be able to take care of her daughter's mental health at the age of 8, because nobody took care of her. Did we ever find out if the mother was abused when she was younger? There's a very high probability that she was abused as well. So it's passed on generation to generation because we're told to keep it at home. And we're not taught that the mental health issues that we have and the things that we're experiencing is what causes not only our mental health issues, but our physical health issues.
I would tap in the great Copeland. I heard him some years ago use the word monolithic, and I didn't know what it was. The answer to our problem is not monolithic. It's not one size fit all. I look at it from an area of three areas: education, exposure, and truth. One, we need to be educated on how we are in the situation that we're in, how our trauma came about, just as she just spoken. And we need to be educated from a position of truth, where it's honest, it's not sugar-coated. Oftentimes, I think, for one, we have to learn how to forgive ourselves and accept that in truth. She spoke about our parents raised us doing what they knew. And for a long time, when I began to recognize things, I would ask my mom, well, how you gonna do this, or how you did that? When I have my kids, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, because that was crazy. And we got into a full-on discussion one day, and she just stopped and said, well, I did the best I could, and she walked off. And at that moment, I'm thinking, that is very cowardly or scary to just walk off without finishing a conversation. Dismissive, yes. But what I didn't look at was her trauma caused her to be how she was. And her doing the best she could was all out of love. It wasn't intentional. So a lot of times we look at trauma and mental health as, with our community, as a person intentionally doing something to us. And we dismiss them and write them off instead of getting to the root of it. So if we educate ourselves on why, from a truthful standpoint, we can begin to expose the things that need to be changed and dealt with from a position of love, understanding, and care. And that, to me, applies within the system of education, political, and all of those things. We have to learn and use education, education, truth, and exposure.
Pull it out. Pull the mic out.
I'd like to point out
Andrea,
that,
pull the mic out of that stand for me, please.
pull it out.
Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I'd like to point out that, a lot of times we will repeat sayings that we know, we feel comfortable repeating those sayings, but they may not necessarily be true. We live in a world of technology right now. Nothing that happens in anybody's house stays in that house anymore.
Right.
Okay. We see everything every single day. It just depends on what you're looking at and how you're judging it. We see people every day who exhibit mental health issues, and our first question is, what is wrong with them? In trauma work, we ask, what happened to you? Okay. And so when we work with children, what we need to do is try to catch them early to focus on what happened to them, because once they get a certain age, we no longer care what happened to them. We are looking at it from a punitive standpoint as what's wrong with you, and then we're going to punish you. Okay.
Right.
So we need to catch these children early. Each school district in the state of Illinois, including Winnebago County and the Rockford School District 205, are supposed to be providing social emotional learning to every child. We know for a fact that that's not happening. Okay. So mental health affects us in every aspect of our life. And so people are talking about mental health. We talk about it every single day, but we need to be talking with a focus, with a purpose, understanding exactly mental health looks like all sorts of things. The young ladies that were standing up here holding the bottles of water, the person that, Tiana, when the bottles start to fall, those are the people that we look at, and they don't necessarily always get the help, they get the blame. Okay. The young lady that was over here holding the pack of water, she is what we refer to as high functioning disabled. Many of us on this panel who are also mental health practitioners have our own high functioning mental health issues. We walk around every day anxious, we walk around depressed, but we have been taught from early on, keep pushing through. Don't look weak, keep going. And so we don't get the attention until we completely fall apart. And then here comes that question, what's wrong with you?
She crazy.
What's wrong with you? She crazy. And so we need to pay attention that mental health is affecting us every day, all day, in various aspects, pretty much in all aspects of our life. Mental health is not just the bad portions of what's going on, it's the good things. In my counseling sessions, I always start out by asking people, tell me one positive thing that happened in your life this week, okay? Because we can get used to being depressed.
Right.
We can get used to feeling bad. We live in a society, again, where social media perpetuates that ignorance. And then we start to accept it as that's the way it's supposed to be. It is not.
So if I can piggyback on what is
Pull it out, Pastor.
what is just been said, and to add some nuance to it as well. In certain pockets, we're talking a lot about it, but in certain pockets, mental health is still taboo. And I'm speaking from that pocket of the church where we tend to make everything the devil, or just pray about it, and then we don't want to deal with the fact that that you can't be spiritually healthy if you're not mentally and emotionally healthy. And so if to answer the question, what can we do to sort of come together? I think what has been said is exactly right. And I would just like to add that as we continue to normalize just the discussion and bring to bear the fact of what our sister just said, and that is very often we're misdiagnosing things as societal problems when the root really is some untreated trauma. What I mean by that is very often, particularly in young African American males, we're seeing rage, but it's actually clinical depression. And because even when we talk about depression, we tend to talk about it from a female perspective, meaning, oh, I can't get out of bed, or I feel this way, or whatever. But depression comes out differently in young African American males, and we don't treat that as if it's a mental issue thing. It's a mental health issue. We treat that as it's a endemic cultural, behavioral, oh, that's just how they act type of situation, when in point of fact, they're clinically depressed. And it is showing up as rage. So yes, we're talking about it, but we're not talking about it with enough nuance so that even within settings like this, we can point out that, okay, people who've been traumatize other people. And until we can get to some of these root issues. So I think we need to continue to normalize our discussion and then let the mental health care professionals, these individuals here on the panel, give the diagnosis, and let's stop letting the Facebook prophets diagnose everything. The last thing I'll say too is that in terms of moving forward, I think we need to do a better job on talking about the constellation of mental health, which is what she was just getting at the last piece. I don't think we've been working as a church for the last 5 years on this end of mental hygiene and mental health crisis prevention, as opposed to just the crisis end. There's certain things that we can do culturally. Now, we've talked around one of them, this idea of, what happens in the house stays in the house. As she just said, that's not true. What happens in the house is going to spill out in the school. It's going to spill out in the streets too. But this idea of focusing in on these areas of resilience, these habits of good mental health that can help us culturally learn how to, she just mentioned one, what was the best thing that happened to you last week? Saying what happened to you as opposed to what's wrong with you. That's something that you don't have to be a mental health care professional to do, that we can incorporate into our culture. And final thing I'll say is, at some point we got to recognize too, that it's not just all the things that happen to us, it's some of the choices that we make as it relates to diet, as it relates to staying hydrated, as it relates to taking vacation, mental health care professionals, as it relates to finances, saving something and all that kind of stuff. So finances is not just a perennial generational stress getting life insurance so we don't have to do a GoFundMe page every time a cousin dies or something like that, and that adds stress. See, that's not a system thing. That's a us thing that we can make it. We got to change the system. But while we're changing that, there's some stuff that we can do that is impacting us in ways that we don't want to recognize that could actually make an actual difference.
I'm so glad that you said that, and I'm gonna let you go, Chrissy, but I wanted to bring up the fact that I know you were in preacher mode right there, but I appreciate that. Here's the thing, and Tony spoke about it earlier too, is, epigenetic trauma. So we like to label that, and because I want to be transparent with you, and I want you to understand what he's saying when he says that, is generational curse. That's epigenetic trauma. When we love to say that's a generational curse. They mama did it. They grandmama did it. They great-great-grandmama did it. Everybody before them did it. So it's bound to happen. A lie. It is a lie. You do not have to behave a way based on your upbringing. We all have a choice. We have a choice. Yeah, there are environmental things, situational things that has happened to us, but we all have a choice to make. And when I hear Mr. Johns says, well, these individuals are going through these things. And then also we talk about, and Stephanie was saying, well, we have to forgive the ones before us. Absolutely true. But the problem is, it is not the individual that is actually dealing with it. The problem is what's going on around them. We're watching them go through that. And now we're saying, okay, you're okay. But they're not, and they're screaming out in all kind of ways, behavioral wise, the things that they say, how they treat in relationships. I can speak to that because I know it's true. I went through it. So we're talking about transparency here. Your behavior, the way you've been raised, the environment you've been raised in, they did the best that they could. Like Tony said, I did the best that I could. But at the end of the day, we all have a choice. I had a choice not to be like my dad. I don't even know who he is, but I had a choice. We have choices. It's up to us to make those choices to be a better person. But when you see someone hurting, do not turn a blind eye and say that's their problem. They need our help. You don't have to be a mental health professional. At the end of the day, we as mental health clinicians say the person is the expert on themselves. We're not the expert. You know what you're dealing with. You know what you're going through. So let's stop blaming. Let's stop pointing fingers at the system. Let's say what we can and what we're capable of doing. Yeah, there are forces, there are things out there that may have gotten in our way, but at the same time, we don't have to succumb to that. Go ahead.
All right. So, case in point to what I believe you had said, or maybe it was Tony, I'm not sure, but I've been in school systems before, and I triage kids in school systems, and not real long ago, to meet a family, and this little boy needs some desperate help. And what I was told by his mama is, us Black people don't do this. So I'm their family secret. So the little boy's going to school. He needs more than I can give, but I'm the family secret. Don't let grandma know. Let the aunt know. So I think with what you're saying, like, it may seem like a story up here, but being a clinician, like, this is the things that I see every day in the school system. I'm the secret. So I also think there's this belief. So, being the person that I am on the phone, if sometimes you can tell with dialect, right, what somebody's culture is. So oftentimes I will get laughed at. And it's, do you say, I know it's a Black woman on the phone, do you need to see a person of color. You don't have to see me. And what I have found, being not a person of color, is sometimes I'm going to get laughed at, because what it is it's kind of helping break that barrier a little bit. It's that difference of, I see you. So no matter what color you are, can you see me before you start to diagnose me, right? So many times I get laughed at. No, you're fine. You're fine. But had I not asked the question, would I have been fine? I don't know that. And sometimes I get a great person of color who's an advocate who says, yes, I'm looking for a person of color. Awesome, let me get you to them. And so the other piece that I wanted to speak to that you had kind of struck within me is there's this piece of, this is my client in mental health. And so if I have to take a client and make them more concerned about my process than their mental health, then we have a problem. And I think in the system, there's a problem with that. And oftentimes, I will get people in my office that sometimes I don't necessarily have to correct, but I'll hear the term, Mom says I should just give it up to God. Well, yeah, yes, but that goes to the silos that we're in. And oftentimes, give it up to God references a silo. I shouldn't be here. And I think that we have to break that barrier too, because whether it's somebody like Mr. Turner over here who's conscious coaching, I'll be honest with you, like, I have a master's degree in therapy, but I can't give you what Tony can give you. I have a master's degree in therapy, I can't give you what the pastor can give you. Or if you're a part of AA, I can't give you that. And so oftentimes, I think there's this threat with clients when they come in the door. I have to hide you from my sponsor, or a therapist who says, yeah, you don't need a coach. And here's the thing, like, you guys, anybody in your family, like, teaching them self-advocacy, that they are the captain of their ship. Like, if I'm your therapist, I'm not telling you what to do. You know yourself best. And if you have a therapist or a doctor or a minister or an awesome coach who tells you that they are the way, they are not the way. This is a team approach, and you drive your treatment. So we need God, we need coaching, we need therapy, we need it all. And we don't have to be in a silo.
So we got many different people here, and to piggyback on what you were saying, you started talking about the school, you started talking about the church and things of that nature. I'm curious to ask this question, and I want to ask it to Dennis and Kavasia, because they have been a part of the Rockford Public School system. And so from a student standpoint, and now from a young adult standpoint, what are you seeing the lack of in the school systems? And also, do you feel that they've put a priority on mental health as a whole? And then after you two, Pastor Copeland, could you speak to the responsibility of the church when it comes to mental health? So go ahead.
So from my experience, I transitioned from growing up in Jackson Public School systems, and then I came to Rockford, and I didn't see a lot of teachers that looked like me. So the first year was very, very hard for me, because I came from having all Black teachers from first grade until fifth grade. And so it was immediately a shock. And I noticed, like, hold on, the kids on the desk, the kids throwing stuff. I was ready to go home because I'm confused at what's going on. And it's because they're not safe. They don't feel safe. They feel threatened. So we feel threatened, we're going to act up. We're going to do the things that we do, because we're going to show you that this is who we are. This is our side of town. Y'all just coming over here to work here. That's how it is. And the teachers also present themselves as, this is just my job. So if you're looking at it as, this is just my job, okay, I'm just going to be a student then. But transitioning to the Kappa program, which needs to be more programs through Kappa now, like, I don't see all of the programs that we had. So in seventh grade, I didn't even have Miss Portis, but I'm sure everyone in here knows who Miss Portis is. And she just played such a big role, like in teaching us respect, teaching us how to be present, teaching us how to represent ourselves, and also Maria Adams. So what I'm trying to say is we need more of ourselves in the school systems, and we need to actually care and not be there to showboat or be there to collect another accolade, because that happens. A lot of people be, you know, I want to run for this because of this reason, and they get in position and there's no help. There's no resources, there's no connection. So if you know that you need to be out here actually helping and paying attention to the youth, and not waiting until it's too late to say, well, check on your strongest friends. No. Or check on your students, or check in with your the parents of the students. We have to have more of that and just kind of make our neighbor's business our business again.
All right, my bad. I would definitely agree with they said that, especially on the representation piece, that I was just reflecting that I don't think there was ever a time that I could really connect to many of my teachers during my educational experience, and having that connection, it means a lot. You know, the teachers can relate. You know, they can know what's going on at home because they are. You know, this teacher may be a Black teacher. They're in a Black family, they're in a Black household. I know what's going on. I can identify with this. You know, I can help this student navigate through this problem. Or I can say, you know, this problem is bigger than the student and this student needs actual help. You know, I feel like we need more of that, you know, within the school system. And especially like Mr. Copeland was saying, that if we don't get that, we're going to see things begin to act out in different ways. And we've already seen that now, you know, where students, I have siblings in the Rockford Public School system, and I just ask them about, you know, how's school going? And they say, oh, well, this student was doing this in class and doing that in class. And just listening behind their stories, it's like, what happened to them? You know, what's going on? Why are you acting this way? And just growing up with my own experience, you can see that, you know, a lot of these students may be acting in these behaviors just to get attention. So they're actually saying something, you know, they're speaking in ways that they can express themselves, and we just need to be there to listen.
Before you go, Reverend Copeland, I forgot Cornell's here, and he's working with Rock Valley, because this all is translating from the Rockford Public School into community college, into universities. And so, Cornell, if you can speak to what you are seeing as a result of some of these things that Kaveh and Dennis spoke about in the community college setting. And then Tony, you just follow up before Paps Copeland.
Absolutely, and I would definitely concur that there is a carryover from the lack of representation from high school to grade school to middle school and going into college, that there's a lack of representation of people who look like us. So whenever I started at Rock Valley, I was interested to see exactly who was in administration, what professors were there who looked like me, and there wasn't a lot. You know, and I know Tony can kind of speak to that also, is that there wasn't a lot, but the ones that were there really catered to the needs of the Black student and the students of color, because they understood that we're in a setting that doesn't look like us. So I went to a predominantly white institution, and I feel that some of the instructors that I had in high school and even in college who were Black and of color realized that I'm about to enter a system that's not necessarily built for success for, and I'm gonna speak for myself, Black men specifically, to succeed. So some of the toughest instructors I've ever had and teachers and professors were honestly Black women. April Prunty, I hope she's watching. The toughest English teacher I have ever had, but there were often times when she would pull me aside and say, I know this isn't your best. Give me something else. And I felt I gave her everything I had in one paper, but I revised that paper 3 more times because she took that time in me as a Black man and realized that I'm entering a sphere that's not necessarily built for me to succeed. And you see the same thing at the community college and higher, where as you go higher within your academics, you may see less and less people who look like you. And it's a matter of, how do I navigate a system that's not necessarily built for me? They don't relate to my circumstances. They don't relate to me as a Black man specifically. So how can you tell me that there's something wrong with me and you don't know what happened to me? So I think the representation definitely needs to be there to a greater capacity. And not only that, it has to be those instructors who want to take care of their Black students. Just as you mentioned, you might have a instructor or a professor or a teacher who is just there to get paid. They're not every Black professor or Black teacher is going to take that time. So not only do we need to do a better job of broadening the spectrum of instructors, but we also need to make sure that we're bringing in the right instructors. Because if I come into a situation where I feel like there's a Black professor who I may be able to connect with, and he's only there to get that tenure check, that's just as bad as me having a white instructor who is built for me not to succeed.
Okay. So I look at what they all hit on was representation. But to me, and this is the reason why I'm really going into education, representation is threefold to me, right? There's visual representation, which is aesthetically. There's literal representation, and then there's physical representation. Okay, and he tapped into, you may have that teacher of color who is just there for that check or that job. Now, fortunately, I didn't begin my educational career in 2005. So I had the privilege of growing up, and I've had 8 teachers of color, and I've seen 3 teachers of color in principal and leadership positions. So the understanding was different. Therefore, that gave me that visual representation. But I've also had a white teacher who impacted me when it comes to my decision to go into school for history and politics, more so than any other Black teacher, because of the literature that was impacted, the literature that they use. So teachers have a curriculum, right? And they're teaching from point A to point Z. But then there's visual references that they can use within that literature. If you go into a classroom, look here in Rockford, on the west or the south side where your schools are predominantly Black, when you walk into those classrooms, the aesthetics of that classroom doesn't represent them and who they are. But we make up majority of the district. So those are 2 forms of representation that we have to have that changes the mental strain of school. But now we're talking about that physical representation. And this goes back to what Pastor Copeland and Kevin were speaking about, taking that onus and that responsibility. I go to school board meetings and I see none of us. There's votes about different things that take place in school and we don't show up. I have literally stopped going to basketball and football games because it irritates me. We'll fill up the stand to cheer for a child that can't read and struggling at home, but we won't come somewhere for free to speak up on their behalf. Now, that goes back to the epigenetic trauma, the what goes on in this house stays in this house. And I have a good friend, D-Boy, he says his grandma told him it's to get used to it. So when we go through things in life, people that have just barely kept it together and kept it moving, we say, get used to it. You know, get used to it, get used to it. Just go through it. But that's not healthy and that's not beneficial for us. So we need representation in those 3 aspects to begin to change, feel comfort, and start to understand things. We got to have that aesthetic representation, that visual. We got to have that literal, and we got to have it physically to where you know somebody has your back. A lot of times in slight defense to some teachers, if you understand the education system, a lot of times, well, most of the time, it's hard for teachers of color to hold tenure, whether it is in a grade school level all the way up to a collegiate level. And when those teachers who are very impactful and begin to change the mindset of your children, those are the ones at risk of losing their positions. So if I don't have nobody physically there to support me when I'm going to bat for their child, now I have to weigh what's more important, the livelihood of my immediate family or ensuring that you have what you need. And self-sustainability is the first thing for anyone, right? So these are the things that we have to look at, because a lot of times people are pigeonholed into a position to where their comfortability, they have to weigh that against their moral judgment of things being right or wrong. So we need representation in all areas so that we can begin to change and break down the barriers of mental health within education.
Okay, Reverend Copeland.
So briefly, I think the question you asked was what role the church is supposed to play.
What do you feel the church's responsibility to mental health?
To mental health. So I'll try to put them in bullet points. Number one is correct the bad teaching that we've promulgated down through the years, because poison will kill you quicker than starvation. Bad teaching does more harm than no teaching. And so just the teaching, back to, I think one of the sisters pointed out, this silo mentality. The mental, emotional, and spiritual health are not separate entities. And so to just say that you need to pray or just let go and let God and not attend to sometimes even the physical thing. I mean, because we haven't even talked about sometimes whether it be hormonal or chemical or genetic, sometimes there's some actual chemical things going on with somebody that you can't pray away. That's something that needs to be addressed, from a holistic point of view. So number one, the church's responsibility is to get some correct teaching that yes, there's a spiritual realm. Yes, God does hear and answer prayer. And yes, we can turn things over to God, but there's a component that he's put in place where we are interdependent with one another, and he's provided us with doctors, with counselors, with dentists. And so if your teeth are raggedy, I don't say pray about it. I say brush your teeth, pray. Dr. Oates' office is over there right off Mulford. And he's a Christian. He'll pray over your teeth while he's cleaning them. So that's one thing. The second thing is that we need to help people understand that even within those things, as it relates to prayer and Bible study, I think we talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
That the Bible says very clearly in Romans chapter 15, verse 4, that the things that were written for our encouragement and hope. People in the Bible were real people, and they had real problems.
Yeah.
And so you're not crazy, you're human. And there are humans even within the faith structure who can show us ways that God entered in, but at the same time, how they got help. Case in point, Jesus, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, what did he do? He called in his friends and said, hey, y'all sit and pray with me. I'm struggling with this situation. And even when he was dying and he was concerned about his mama, he told his disciple, hey, you take care of my mama. Hey, mama, this is your. So he found ways to take advantage and to leverage the community that he had built around himself in order to handle the issues of stress. Final thing I'll say is, I think the church's responsibility, along with teaching and providing community, is for advocacy. So again, the reason I'm on the mental health board is not because I ain't got nothing else to do. It's because, number one, I'm and still am involved in criminal justice work. And one of the things I saw is that a lot of things that we're putting in the criminal justice category are really in the mental health category. So let me get over here and help to make sure that what is happening here is kosher and that the money is going where it's supposed to go, all those types of things. So advocacy is where the church needs to sort of fill in the gap. My wife and daughter teach over at Lewis Lemon on purpose because we made a decision that, hey, we need, and my daughter specifically said, I'm going to go get my degree and I'm going to come teach in Rockford because I didn't have any Black teachers. She made that decision. She's at Lewis Lemon right now. My wife, same thing. I'm with Alignment Rockford and here locally, and then with Advance Illinois statewide, where we helped to change the funding formula for the whole state, basically because I feel it my Christian responsibility to advocate and not just talk about the system. Okay, let's change it. You know, at some point, Christians and the church in particular need to stop. And for those of you, let me just say one last thing here. That is, those who like to complain about the church, you know, and what is the church doing with the money? No, because this is real. First of all, the average pastor is bivocational, meaning he's going to work at Chrysler, going to work at the school district, going to work over at the hospital, and then coming and trying to watch over your soul. Average church in America is 150 people and less. So your money is going to keep the lights on, keep the air going, and to do all those types of things. And if you will get behind your local church situation, your local pastor, and the local leaders in your church, then perhaps your church can do more. Now, by God's grace at New Zion has been tremendously generous, and that's why I'm able to go and be on these boards and speak out and do these things, and why we have a legal clinic and all that type of thing, because the church is supposed to get in the middle of the problem and provide a solution.
Thank you for that. You spoke about advocacy, and I think this is an area for CASA and deals with CASA. How does that all intertwine, and with the advocacy, the family issue, how does CASA get involved in that?
CASA gets involved by advocating for children who are within the juvenile justice system who have experienced abuse and neglect. We train volunteers to advocate on their behalf. Many of the children who are in that system have come from backgrounds of poverty, mental health issues, problems with education, just underrepresentation in every aspect. One of the things that at CASA that we're trying to get is people of color involved, because right now there are more children of color within that system than any other system. So we need people like you and me to show up for these children. These are the same children that we're talking about here in the educational system with 205, Rockford Public Schools. And so I feel that they are our responsibility as a whole, because we're talking predominantly about the Black community. And how the church can get involved is by making sure that the public is aware of organizations like CASA that represent children who are in need.
So switching from kids, from the youth to elderly, geriatrics, Cora, which is our nurse, one of our nurses that that deal with access and things of that nature. What are you seeing when it comes to mental health from your standpoint?
Okay, let me just say something. I know you told us don't be long-winded, but I wanted to get in on the last question that you overlooked.
Go
me
ahead.
on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know.
Go ahead.
So, being a nurse, I've been the first nurse in a lot of places. And it's been vocalized. Oh, they hired you. Are you a quota? And it's like, well, I'm not a quota, but you know, I'm good at what I do. So the other thing is, being one of the first is being discriminated against my own color. I don't want you to take care of me. It's like, well, why? I don't know you from Adam. So I was telling someone about an example. I had got pills ready for a young man to give him. He was in the hospital when I did bedside. And he says, I'm not taking those pills from you. I don't know what you did. I'm like, dude, you just saw me punch him. So I got one of my non-colored buddies. Hey, he won't take his pills from me. Would you like to switch patients? She took the same pills that I had in the cup and gave them to him. He swallowed. I was like, well, if I was going to kill you, I got you. You know, so we are talking about others not respecting us or not doing us for us, but we're not even doing our own. One seminar I went to like 20-something years ago, it said it takes a village to raise a child, and when you split it up, the village is ill. We're ill. We're ill, and we don't even know that we're ill, or we're just ignoring that we're ill. So I'm just saying, our access to healthcare, I don't live in Rockford, I work in Rockford. But where I live, our health department is in the middle of the city because it's access. They intentionally put it in the middle of the city so people can get there. If you had to walk, if you had to get we don't have a bus system like Rockford does, but the way that I hear when I'm talking to my on my job with managed care, it's like we don't have a bus pass. We know it's free, but I don't have transportation to get there. For that hospital that we didn't mention, Representative West, well, it's out on East Riverside now. I can't get there. I need this, I need that. So Rockford, you have a mental health desert to me, because every day from about 9 o'clock, it depends on what time zone I'm in. I have license in 5 different states. I'm hearing it all over, as Kevin said. It's not just a Rockford issue. It's a United States issue. We don't have the resources. So when we try to give the resources, Crusaders Healthcare Center, I know when I was the manager of Crusader Clinic in Freeport, it was like, oh, we can't come there. That's for poor people. It's like, so you don't want to get help because of the stigma of what Crusaders stood for? Or I can't go to the health department because that's for poor Black people. Well, you Black. So am I. I went there, and I think I turned out fine. And I'm sure everybody on this panel had different things that we had to bring and learn to go against, you know? We weren't always up here sitting like this. We had to go through some things just like everybody sitting out in this audience. And that's where I think that people forget. You can't forget where you came from. It's just important that you don't go back there. So now, for the question that you asked.
You going? Oh, I thought you had answered it.
That's introduction.
We got some.
Don't say nothing about preaching.
That's
just an introduction.
I didn't say. I wanted to say it, but I didn't say it. But
so anyway, yeah, I won't talk about the preachers either. But anyway, one of the things that I see in barriers for me in the jobs that I have is lack of insurance, lack of trust, your access to services, your cultural sensitivity. Now, Chrissy and I have been knowing each other for some years. I do know that I respect her and she respects me. I stay in my lane, she stay in her lane because we both complement each other. I am not gonna go to a doctor that talks down to me, because the first thing that I would say is, who do you think you're talking to? And I know that I've heard that being an office nurse before. Lack of specialists. The young man was saying about the specialists earlier. We don't have that. Your insurance determines where you go. Okay? If you don't have insurance, some hospitals I know have, where I'm at, we call it assisted care, where if you're in the hospital with no insurance, you fill out the paperwork and they'll help pay for your bills. Sometimes we are too proud to even do that And it's like, you go for the resources. This is a resource that is available that people don't do because, oh, I can't do that. I got a Louis Vuitton, but you broke. And Louis Vuitton is not going to pay for your medical stuff. There's pharmaceutical programs out there, needymeds.com. Go on it. Look and see if you fill out the paperwork. See if you can get the med that you need instead of saying, well, I'm going to just go without. Your doctor does not know that you can't afford something if you don't open up your mouth and communicate. And I know, being in the health profession, we communicate differently. Like Miss Stephanie was saying, like PTSD. And I was like, I know what it is, but did everybody else know what it is? We have our own language, and we assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. And just remember this, that 15-minute doctor's visit, they have 7 minutes to see you, 7 minutes to dictate. It's not to go in and be like, oh yeah, I got to whip out. You're going to make another appointment. We have to remember why we're going to the doctor. Write it down. You guys just don't know how frustrating that is. It's like you don't write it down. Well, the doctor didn't talk to me. And then the other thing is, I think it was Pastor said the Facebook prophets. Stop putting your mess on Facebook. Stop talking to your friends about what's going on with you, because see, everybody is different. My genes are different than your genes. But that's what I hear all the time. Well, Sister so-and-so said that they'll do this. Sister so-and-so said they'll do this. It's like, well, I don't know who sister is, but she's wrong. So just remember, you're an individual, just like we're all individuals here. When we leave here, we know each other's name, but we don't all live in the same house.
Well, for the sake of time, because this is a huge panel, great discussion, but I want to open the floor up for questions. But I want to start out just for a second. Is I want the therapists to speak to the stigma or the stereotype we've had to endure through the years. Because as a therapist, and I hear everyone says that I want a therapist that look like me. Let me tell you something. My entire caseload is probably 80% other and 20% African. And I said that to say because we say we want therapy and we need therapy, but we have particulars, we have these ideas of what that looks like. And so when I finally got one of the first African-American young men that came to my office, he said, I can't come to therapy next week because I'll be in Miami. He says, I can't pay you. Now, mind you, I'm already working out a sliding scale for him. So he didn't have any insurance. And so I'm working out a sliding scale for him, and he's paying me $25 a week, $25 a week. And he tells me, I can't come to therapy next week because I'll be in Miami. I mean, y'all tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, what are our priorities? That's what I'm saying. What are our priorities? Is it to get mental health under control, or is it to manage our mental health? Is it to really get the help that we need? Or I just don't know. Maybe I'm overlooking this thing and seeing it a different way, but that don't compute to me. I'm trying to help you, but you would rather go to Miami. And then he comes back. He says, you know, my rent's due. I don't know what I'm gonna do. My car notes due. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And guess what I told him? Well, you and I, no longer $25, because you can go away and not pay your bills, and then you come back and you put the onus on me to help you through this mental health issue that you're having. We put ourselves in positions, and then we want to say, okay, this therapist can work a miracle with me. We're not miracle workers. We don't have a magic wand to help you get out of the things that you're in. We need you guys to tap into the tools that you have and help us help you. You are the professionals. not us. We're there to help you. So don't be the guy or the young lady that says, I can only give you 25 and I got red bottoms on and I'm going down to Miami, the best club down there, and then you come back and you can't pay your rent. It doesn't compute. So before we open up the floor, therapists, what are you hearing? And when it comes to stigma, stereotyping, when it comes to the world of therapy?
Well, I am one of the few therapists in town that we do not accept Medicaid. We accept private pay or insurance. And so I get a lot of looks when people say, oh, you know, you need to be helping more people. Well, I am 55 years old and I plan to retire one day. And I have been working in social services here in Rockford, Illinois since I was 19 years old. I worked at one particular agency for 30 years where I had some of the best dressed homeless people in town because I dressed them. Okay, so, you know, we get to certain stages of our life where we have to do what we need to do. You know, great for your sliding scale. It ain't gonna pay for that master's degree. You know, student loan is a huge issue that we're dealing with here in town. So, but no, people do come to me and, you know, I'm here on this panel, I'm Andrell Bragg Shaw, but most people in Rockford know me as Dina Bragg. And, you know, people will walk into my office and they'll be like, whoa, I didn't know you were the therapist that they referred me to. Here I am. You know, when we talk about people calling and asking, do you have a therapist of color? We have to be very specific. Is it a Black therapist that you want? Is it a Hispanic or Latinx therapist that you are looking for? Is it an Asian therapist that you are looking for? So we have to break that down. I remember a time in Rockford where we had one Black therapist in private practice. We now have over 50. You don't see them all the time, but they are here. I can guarantee you. I randomly look and I call them and I introduce myself to them, because if it is not someone that I can help because it's someone that I know, if there's a conflict of interest, I need to have a pool of therapists who I can refer to in the community. So they are out there. And if it's not something that we specifically can help you with, we can definitely refer you to other people. Miami? Wow. I had a client that went to Dubai.
Wow. You can't make this stuff up, right? I'm just telling you, I know.
And I said, I'm gonna need you to make a payment today before you leave. I talk, and depending on who I'm talking to, I talk a lot. But when I am in that office, I am talking with a purpose. I am talking with purpose and direction, and I am there because you have said you wanted my assistance. And so I am there to provide that assistance. If in fact you do not want it, I don't force it on anybody. We have waiting lists. We have plenty of clients, you know, that are available for us to all work with. The stigma is lightening, okay? People are seeing other therapists that look like us, not just therapists, but people in other systematic positions throughout the city. We are there, people are seeing us, and people are coming. They are coming. You know, I don't want the doom and gloom that we still don't do this. We are moving forward in droves. So we have to be prepared. We can't talk about people don't come and then they get here and we don't have what they need.
That's right.
So they are coming. So we need to be prepared for that.
Chrissy, what you got?
That's hard to follow.
No, that's
can
okay.
you repeat your question, Kevin?
Just what are you hearing for our stigma, stereotypes when it comes to therapy, therapists, anything of that nature?
Okay, so there's this misconception. My most favorite misconception is they come to therapy. We go to therapy, right? And you didn't fix me. That one's my favorite, Kevin. You didn't fix me. So back again to, I don't advertise that I fix anybody. I don't know you. I'll never know you like you know you. And so for me to sit with you as a therapist, I'm walking with you. I'm holding a roadmap. We're deciding which direction you want to go, and I'm going to walk with you. I don't fix anybody. That's not, I don't want that title. Some of the other things, you know, So fun fact, I'm one of those therapists that I work 2 to 3 12-hour days a week, every week. So my first client starts at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. My last client's usually around 6 or 7 o'clock at night on a Saturday night. So today, I got the wonderful, wonderful honor to be here with everybody in this room. And even this morning, oh, I forgot that you're not going to be here. Yes, I reminded you. So like there's almost this expectation of if I'm your therapist, that I don't get a life. Now, that does not say that my clients aren't important, but I can't even begin to help you or anybody else, including my own family, if I can't take a day off to take care of me. So I think one of the stigmatic things to be a therapist is you will be there at my beck and call. And I know many of us live that life. And so that's one of the stigmatic things I hear quite often. Wait a minute, but you canceled your last 2 sessions, and I'm supposed to jump because your girlfriend broke up with you. I have to look at that. Exactly. You know, so I think as therapists, like we do get a lot of stigmas, and it's, you're going to fix me. You're going to judge me. You know, and I think as a therapist too, that means I'm the expert of you. And, you know, to say that some of you have not had that experience, I would say that would be a lie to say that. But the fact of the matter is you are the expert of you. And that's the biggest stigma that I get. You're supposed to walk into my office and I'm supposed to know. It simply doesn't work that way.
Thank you. So questions, let's,
Hold
Tony,
on.
if you don't, what?
I know you said therapist, but I think there's a whole little deeper point of that, because I see us, especially as a community of Black people, we think that community, people that provide community service, mental health services, social services, we expect them to do things for us for free. So, and I'm sure Pastor Copeland can attest to that. He probably gets those phone calls from someone he hasn't seen since Easter of '86, and their lights is out and the church needs to pay their lights. Now, I believe if you are a active member of a church and you run into a situation, then that church should help you because you are an active member of their church. Same thing with therapy, right? When somebody is doing a service for you, you need to actively do what you can and work something out to keep that relationship going. It's give and take, right? And I even see that with mentoring and doing academic coaching with families. I'll get a family that asks, hey, how much do you charge a month? It's $50 a month. Oh, you help out the community, that's a lot. Now, this always goes on June, July, August. And then around this time of the year, February, March, when their kids are getting kicked out of school, it's, hey, I need you to help me. They're trying to put my kid out. I'm going through this and that. Okay, I can help you, but I need to be back paid for the time that I didn't help you, because now I have to go back and figure out how everything happened and what wasn't done. So you're asking me to do the work that I would have been done and would have been prevented, and then some coming up to the date. So I think it's more so an issue of, you know, us being responsible and taking care of our obligations and knowing that this is a reciprocal relationship that people are doing. We shouldn't expect people to do things for us for free. And when we expect people to do things for us for free, I see it as the word freedom. And I cut it in half right after the E. Because if I'm going to keep doing something for you for free, I got to be dumb. Because that don't benefit. So I think it's an issue of us really paying attention to what we're trying to do.
So Tony, you're going to a special place. So somebody had mentioned Cora, like keep your business off of social media, right? And so when Tony doesn't just jump for you when you haven't followed his treatment that he set forth, that you collaborated and moved forward, now there's a back bill that Tony needs. And I think as a therapist, as a coach, as a professional that has a private business, now we live in a world where you're not going to sweat it for a second to get on that Google review. Chrissy Gowan didn't help me. She charged me too much. Tony Turner didn't show up like he said he would. And now we're living in a world that, wait a minute, you didn't do your partnership here,
Right.
but you're going to be willing to go out there and destroy somebody's business because you're mad. And that's the problem we have in our digital world of we're trying to help people. And it's really hard to help people when they're hurting us. So now we're back to this collaborative.
So we're going to go ahead and get started so we can wrap up here. And we're going to start with our questions first. Go ahead.
In a lot of different conversations when it comes, since we're talking about mental health, these are for the therapists. What advice do you have for people who want to seek therapists, but they're worried, or therapy or counseling, but they're worried about it being scripted, or, you know, that's why a lot of people don't seek counseling, because they feel like whoever they're going to is going to be reading off a script and not giving like real advice or being genuine. Thank you. So what is your advice for people who really want to come talk to somebody, but they don't want to talk to somebody who's not relatable?
So I'm going to change that up a little bit. I like the question. The question is what do you do when someone wants to see a therapist, but they feel like it's scripted? Am I correct? Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to not chastise, but I'm going to put a disclaimer out to us as therapists, right? I show up to work like this. What you see is what you get. And that's what I say a lot of times. So if it's scripted, that's what I'm going to say scripted. What you see is what you get. Because here's the thing, as a therapist, that really got me into it in the first place, is that I was always taught, and I've always seen on the TV visually, that a therapist is someone, older Caucasian male with a cardigan sweater on, with khaki pants on, and Doc Martens shoes. That was my idea of what a therapist looked like. So as I began to get more into therapy, I said, you know what? It doesn't help if I can't be me. And so what I'm saying is that us as therapists, we have to be ourselves. What you see is what you're going to get. And if we can't do that, and if that doesn't work for you, I am, as a therapist, giving you permission to go out and seek someone that does. Because you have to feel comfortable who you talk to, who you tell the things to that you hold dear within you. You guys have to feel safe. And if I can tell you that I grew up like you say, okay, I can identify with that person. Or if I can say that I know that I've dealt with people that look like you, or I know how that feels because I've dealt with it even as at different races, then I can help you, and you'll feel safe. So the thing about it is that we as therapists have to make you feel safe and cared for when you're in session with us. So I always tell my clients, what you see is what you get. I may come in with a hoodie on. I may come in with some jeans on, which most of the time I do, because what is my look? How is that going to help you? So hopefully I answered that. Go ahead.
I, as an individual practitioner, you know, I'm my own boss, and so I don't have a dress code or anything like this. I am dressed this way today because I'm before everyone else. My hair is not usually straight. My hair is usually in a big fro or an afro puff, depends on what my beautician decides to do. However, sometimes I have a nose ring in. It just depends. I want to make the person who is seated before me comfortable. Okay, it is not a matter of me, you know, trying to look or fit a certain situation for any and everybody. If there's a day where I'm working with more teenagers, I might wear jeans. I might wear, you know, sneakers or whatever. I'm not that young. I don't always dress like that. Just depends. But when you go to seek out a therapist, and you have your initial session with them, if you do not feel comfortable with them, you need to go and find another therapist. This work is too important for you to start this journey and be deterred by the way someone looks, what they say, or how they behave. If you are engaging with a therapist who appears to have thin skin and they make that more about them than you, you should know automatically they are not for you. Okay?
If I were to, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kaja.
I just wanted to speak from the perspective of someone who had that same issue. I was concerned with people being genuine because, I know I'm coming as a genuine person who needs help. And I obviously got to the point where I said, I need to ask and I need to seek it out. So it's like you're choosing the car that you want to drive for the next 5-10 years, or you're picking the insurance that you want to have, you're choosing the hospital you want to go to. It's us making a choice and being able to change or switch gears. Like if it doesn't work the first time, it just doesn't work. Try again and again and again, because you're going to find someone who can actually help you and relate to you. If they don't relate to you, then they can just understand you. They have the ability to feel what you are feeling and to have compassion for whatever it is that you're going through. So just keep trying to seek out that help and you'll receive it. And I think that's also saying, like, the teacher will show up when the student is ready and saying that they're present and ready, because some people say they want help and they're not ready to seek help. They're not ready to hear the truth. They're not ready to sit down and say, I have a problem, I have an addiction. They're not ready for that. So you have to be ready to receive the help to get it.
And it's also important when selecting a therapist that you read bios and read the organization's website and things like that, their credentials. Again, because it's twofold, it's a relationship. It's not just about the therapist, it's about you and what you need as well. And like she kind of said, it's an interview process. So when you come meet with us, you're interviewing us as well for the first time to see if it's a good fit and a connection. So just reading those bios and asking those questions is important when you're selecting a therapist, somebody that you're entrusting that therapeutic relationship with.
Being a local nurse in the area and studying my master's in social work, I think a big concern is seen as the other individual that we may seek as help, not knowing if there is an African American clinician to assist us. And I think, just as you said, it is a concern, us as being, mental health providers or seeking to be, or being that nurse, that state mandated clause. I think that is a lot that has to do with it. And individuals are afraid. And I think we need to know when we address issues, what is a major issue that needs to be referred, that falls under that state mandated, versus can we work through this? Because that more than likely is probably the underlying issue why they're needing to be seen. And so don't take it and just run with it and say, oh my, you need, or pass the buck and say, oh, you need to go, or I need to call the police, or you're unsafe. Let's address the issue and find out more about it before it's just ran off and says, you know what I mean? Well, yeah, this is your underlying issue, but you need to go see this person, or we need to call the police on this person. And so a lot of times, I guess we as providers in the area, we do need to know that, because that is a big issue. That is kind of sometimes, when you're not dealing with someone that's from your area or grew up how you grew up, that they'll be like, whoa, yeah, you're battered, you're abused, but let's talk through it, because that's what I need help with. I don't need to be referred to. I don't need the cops to be called. And so sometimes it just kind of goes over the top a little bit, when it kind of can just be, it's just fire. It's really not, but we have to be aware and know what the difference is, but a lot of times it goes over the top and to the extreme that that individual still doesn't get the help. And then they're afraid. And that's the one that's saying, I can't get help. They don't understand me. And so I guess maybe, and I think we kind of forget that, because we learn so much in a book that we're trying to put this person in a book, and it's not. Everyone's different, and everyone's curtailed to be a different situation. And so I think that needs to be looked over all. Just my opinion, I don't know.
Cornell, did you want to address that?
I would like to say, as a social worker myself, I definitely agree that there's this quick method of referring out. Whereas if someone is expressing some sort of issue or concern that they may have within themselves or someone else, that the immediate thing to do is to, oh, that's not my area. Let me run over here and grab somebody else. So one example of that is in my previous role, I was an academic advisor at Rock Valley College, and I developed a really good relationship with a student, and mainly it was just picking classes out. But this student had some real personal issues going on, some household changes, some domestic violence issues that they had gone through with a significant other, and they were contemplating suicide. Didn't exactly have a plan, of course, that was laid out, but I could have immediately left the office and went and grabbed our personal success counselor and referred them out. But it was something about that interaction that student felt the need to confide in me. So opposed to immediately leaving the office, getting the counselor, and having this student recount everything that had gone on to someone that they had never met with, it's like, maybe I should stay in this space here. We have the conversation. And then maybe at some point, if necessary, we slowly do a soft handoff to our staff counselor. So you do see that a lot. And I definitely think that's an issue as it relates to mental health, is if there's a individual who's confiding in you, there's something about you personally that person feels safe. You've offered that person a space of safety where they have the ability to let you know that they're feeling a certain way or they're contemplating something. So I definitely agree, and that's certainly a concern I think that needs to be addressed specifically within our community.
I got last two questions. We're over a little bit, but I think that's my fault. But I got last two questions right here before we get out of here.
Okay. I grew up in the church, and I hear a lot of people say, just give it to God. Even though I grew up in the church, I had to learn what give it to God mean. So people on the street that ain't never been to church, if something happened to them, 80% of the people will go to the church and ask for help. So I guess my question is there something that you can give to pastors or churches where they know where to send the people to? Because you got this thing going on. We had about maybe 100 people here. The word was out on the street, but a lot of people didn't know about it. So Pastor Copeland can attest to this. A lot of people will go to the church because as a kid, I was always taught the pastor knew everything. But people need to know where to go to.
To that effect, we blasted this for over a month. We put it on all the social media sites, even places where I'm uncomfortable, which is TikTok. But we've plastered it all over the place. Again, what I said earlier, it's a choice, because we're not forcing anyone to do anything. It's a choice. You saw it fit it's important to you. We saw it fit to be here because it's important to us. It comes down to the individual person believing that this is something that is important, that they need in their life in order to take root for them. Now, and I'm gonna say this, and Pastor Copeland and I have had this conversation before. I have had pastors on my caseload, but I haven't had any black pastors. You were saying that the church and the pastors don't have access, the leadership don't have access, don't know about certain things, right? Pastor Copeland and I have talked about, Andrell and I have talked about getting these directories out to help people identify who is who. But it starts with these type of conversations. And until we are able to come together and make choices for ourselves that are beneficial to us, then we're going to always be in the same situation that we're in. It has to be beneficial for us, or we have to at least believe it is in order to take part in it. And that's across the board, not just the church. That's across the board. So we're going to provide these avenues to put the information out. But these individual people have to make a conscious effort and decision to say, I'm going to use these resources to get the help that I need, the help for my family, and so on and so on. That's how that works.
I guess my point is, if you get the directories out, somebody might feel more comfortable going to their pastor asking, who do you recommend? So if I have to, I help you pass out directories. We want people to feel comfortable enough to go to, they'll feel comfortable enough to go to their pastor. And then their pastor can say, well, go so-and-so.
So now I'm going to answer that too, because Pastor Copeland knows me. So he can come and say, you go to Kevin. But if the pastor don't know me, he ain't going to recommend me. So the pastors also got to get to know these people down here. See? So Reverend Copeland is here. He's getting to know these pastors. I'm not checking nobody's schedule either. But we have to stop pointing a finger, and we all have to get involved and say, you know what? I think it's important for my church that we have access to Kevin. We have access to Felicia. We have access to Andrea, so on and so on. It's up to them too, and as well as it's up to us. Okay. So last question.
Good afternoon. First off, I just want to say thank you all for being a part of this very engaging conversation. I really appreciate it, and it's so necessary. My name is Anquinette Parham. I'm the Executive Director of Health and Human Services for the City of Rockford. My question to you all is actually threefold. So first off, I have a request. Part of my responsibility is that my department oversees Head Start in Rockford. One of the things that we're charged with doing is providing mental health services to children in early childhood. So we provide services to women who are pregnant and children aged 0 to 5. So I have an allocation of a couple $100,000 annually that goes towards mental health professionals. I am appalled at the quality of services that are provided to my families, which are overwhelmingly Black, Brown, and also other minorities. So my first question is, I believe the directory is a great first step, but I would really like to know if there's any plans amongst Black mental health professionals in this community, or even not just Black, to Christy's point, but just really culturally competent and relevant therapists to understand what's going on in the lives of the families and patients that they serve, to really kind of connect in a way that they can be more impactful. That's something that is critically needed. I just came back actually on Thursday night from the National Head Start Association conference, and I met with some clinicians from all over the country that are doing amazing work in the early childhood space with families, but the linchpin of that is culturally competent clinicians. And I know that what I am currently paying for in my budget, that is not what my families are getting. And I was thrilled to hear what Andrell said about there being over 50 clinicians in this community now who look like the families that we serve. So I just want to know, are there any plans to even align in a way stronger than just the creation of a directory? That's my first question. Secondly, that kind of relates to the first, the folks who typically win the contracts, get the agreements, not just in my own, but I also think about like the mental health co-responder program. I think about some of the programs with the district, even Handle with Care, which is a new program. And when you look at the faces of those folks providing the services, they don't look anything like the students. And what we know is that the big players in town who typically always land these contracts still lack the cultural competency to do the work in a way that's effective. So how can we, as a community, hopefully even led by a charge of mental health professionals, how can we push back on that to hold those entities accountable for the services that they claim they're providing, that they continually get funded to provide, but we know are not doing what they actually should be doing? And my last question, one of the roles of my department as well, we are in a health literacy project And I just want to know just even some ideas, a baseline, or anyone who would be willing to even participate in that effort around helping us to improve health literacy around mental health. I like what you said, Pastor Copeland, around mental hygiene. And what does that look like just in a practical way to help empower our community in the area of health literacy as it relates to mental health? Thank you.
Thank you, Aquanet. Anybody wants to take that before I go? We got 10 minutes to work with that. Go ahead.
Could you repeat the question?
She had 3 of them, Andrea. Yeah, just take
Can
a
I say
stab
this
at
real
it.
quickly? First of all, if you're paying for services, I feel it's your responsibility to follow up with that, to find out where they're, hold them accountable for the money that you're spending. I know if I'm paying for a service, I want to see results, and I want you to walk me through it. Give me a summary. I want to be able to come and follow up with you about the care that you were supposed to give.
And we do that, and when it's not good enough, and they can say, okay, we'll find you someone different, and then they don't, and then my families are left with nothing.
I would
They give us excuses why they can't hire people and can't get them in, and it's a vicious cycle.
I would seek those individuals out that I think that that would fit the description of what I'm looking for. I would be that advocate. I would take it upon myself to find those people.
Go ahead.
I think, this is something that has been in the making for quite some time. Kevin and I started this conversation back in 2017, 2018. And so we knew prior to COVID really what it did was illuminate a lot of the things that were already going on. We were aware prior to COVID that the younger generation that we're seeing right now were already dealing with epidemic rates of anxiety and depression. So we already knew this was going on. When Kevin called, he said, hey, let me ask you about this thing that you and I have been talking about prior to COVID. And we had started getting together once a month, bringing in each African-American or Black therapist that we were encountering in town. And that took a lot of us getting on the phone, asking, hey, who do you know this person? Do you know that person? And Maurice Aldridge and I started calling people and say, hey, meet us for lunch. Then COVID hit and the thing kind of went by the wayside. But even in the middle of COVID, I started making phone calls, started looking online, started calling people saying, hey, I need you to know who I am. I want to know who you are. We want to get together in a collaborative effort to let people know that we are here. And so this actually started a couple years ago, and Kevin just jumped out there and said, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go. But, Anquanette, I know that you are out here tirelessly working on 28-hour days, and, there's just never enough time in the day to get all of this out. But even though there are those of us who are in private practice, private practice agencies are open to filling out paperwork and documentation, whatever, for grants. They just don't always know what grants are available. So it's a twofold situation, but it seems that in our local area, once a entity or person has been secured, they just stay out. They just stay focused on that person. They don't look for anyone else. So, and when we talk about multiculturalism, if you are an actual licensed therapist or you are a master's level clinician, the educational programs, they're required to include multiculturalism. And so don't be afraid to ask people, what is your background and what is your training in multicultural counseling?
I would add to that some very important, great friend of mine said years ago, her name is AP Esquire. And I was talking about different situations like this. And she asked me, what is your end game? What do you want to see come out of it? Now, I appreciate everything that Mrs. Parham has said. But it goes back to that part of being honest with ourselves. Me and Kevin have had these conversations as well. We know that the big name players tend to get it all, right? But the honest part about it is we have to begin to learn how to collaborate amongst each other, right? So that we can go after these big dollars, because what prevents a lot of us from getting these big dollars is capacity, right? So there's a program and they want to say, well, you have to have the capacity to service 1,000 people. Well, we got 10 different organizations, and as one person, your capacity is only 100. Similar to the church thing. If we look at the issues that we have within our community that surround mental health, they're the same issue in different sectors. So let's take mental health off the picture. Let's say with the church. There are several churches, but as Pastor Copeland mentioned, that averages, you said 150 or so members, right? If you go look in the phone book, and this is not including all of the Black churches in Rockford, we have all of these churches. But how many times do we see all of these churches come together and have one service? Because it's a thing of leadership being in control, I'm in charge, and we get away from service to leadership. And actually can't even say leadership, because to me that's not effective leadership. That's just being in charge. So I think we have to take it upon ourselves to effectively come together, which is things that we have been talking about. Let's put all of these groups together. Let's put this group of therapists. Let's put this group of coaches. Let's put this group of medical advisors and come up with a whole team structure so that we can effectively come to the city and say, we have the capacity to do X, Y, and Z. And they don't have the capacity to do what we do because we have the cultural relationship, we have the understanding, we have the knowledge, and we meet all requirements for that. So technically the past 10, 15 years, they've been constantly failing, and you constantly give them the money because they have the capacity and there's nobody to compete. So what we have to say is, no, there's nobody to compete with us because we have X, Y, and Z, and they've been failing. And we have to call it out, not only us as a collective, but us as a community. Going back, case in point, we're not showing up physically. We're not showing up at these meetings where this is going on and saying, hey, I would like to see this group get this money because it's tax dollars. I'm a tax-paying citizen and so on. So we have to do it collectively.
So, awesome. As we get ready to end, and to also speak to what you said, Aquanet, is this is the second step here, is this conversation. Our jobs are not finished. This right here is just a start of something different. I don't believe anybody on this panel has mimicked what we've already had. I think we're all different. We have different qualities, and it's purpose that we have a pastor. It's purpose that we have young students. It's purpose that we have advocates, therapists, nurses, coaches, because that's what our communities are made up of. And my question to you, to all of you guys, is when you look at this panel, what do you see? Use your imagination. What do you see? These individuals can be whatever you need them to be in your community. Y'all have to give them the opportunity. And so now we've just tore down the wall. This is Berlin. We don't tore the wall down. Now let's start building relationships. Let's start working together. Your literacy program. I've been talking about mental health literacy for years. Let's do it. We got the people here to do it, and they are willing to get involved. The director is not just a start. This is just part of the plan. We're going to go beyond that. This is not the end. So if you guys have ideas, if you guys want things to happen in your community, get on the phone. Everyone has a brochure here. Our contacts are on there. Contact us. That's why we put it on there. I don't believe anybody up here put it on there and said, I don't want them to call me. I don't want them to email me. Let's do this. Let's come together and work together. It's not about the church. It's not about the community. It's not about this. It's about every single person here. So we got to make sure that we're pushing the agenda of humanity. Because at the end of the day, when all this stuff goes away, we don't want you to feel like you're alone. We want you guys to be able to come and say, you know what? I remember talking to Tony, or I remember hearing what Tony had to say. Let me call him and see what he can do and how he can help me. And I will say this to Aquanet is that a lot of the huger, that's not a word, a lot of the bigger entities have a tendency to get all the things that they need, but not give back. We have a lot of small people here. They have companies, they have businesses that are willing to get their hands dirty and get involved. They just need an opportunity. That's all we need. This right here was to say, hey, we're here, we're available, and we're accessible. So I want to thank everybody. This has been a treat for me. I'm excited about what we're going to do. And I just thank you guys for coming out. I truly, truly appreciate it. And please give my panel a round of applause. Don't leave here without talking to anybody. If you need some help, get numbers. You got the books. So please mingle. We got to get out of here, but thank you.